an endless run of defeats that I just gave up in the end. I mean, for example, one tiny example. My last book, Cities of Dreams, I had a contract with the hardback publisher for them to do a paperback.
Yeah.
But the hardback sold fewer copies than any of my books, and I thought it was going to be a bestseller. And I thought,
Yeah,
gosh, I've written a
I would
bestseller.
have thought so, because I remember when it came out. I mean, I'd written a book about mazes, or started writing a book. I mean, it's never been published. I wrote and wrote about mazes for a long time, and then I discovered your book.
Yeah.
And I was amazing, because like you were saying things that I was saying, and I thought I sort of like almost gave up on writing mine because you'd already said it.
Yeah.
And I thought, what an incredible book. You know, what an
Yeah.
incredible Cities of Dreams was, and I'm surprised that it wasn't the best
Well,
seller.
it sold 800 copies in hardback, which is bugger all.
Yeah.
And the publisher then broke the contract. He refused to publish the paperback. Now, the legal representative of the Society of Authors said, no problem here. He said, we can either force them to publish or take several £1,000 compensation, whichever you prefer.
Yeah.
He said, leave it, I'll deal with it. And then, at that moment, this guy, this legal man at the Society of Authors, decided to go back to private practice, right? And he just left and went back to private practice. And his successor, a woman, contacted me and said, I'm not going to do anything about this. You know what? I've got a contract which has been broken, and you won't do anything about it. She said, no, don't want to upset them. What? But that kind of thing has happened so often, and so unlikely.
Yeah.
That you give up. That thing Colin's on about, this guy Rand,
Yeah.
cutting me out of the book.
Yeah.
I've never heard of a co-author doing that to another author in my life.
No, it's
And neither
outrageous.
has Colin, of course. But that's the effect I have. I create these situations which are unbelievably wrong.
Yeah.
And so in the end you give up. You say, well, what's the point? What's the point of bothering,
Yeah.
And it's always been like that. I mean, the first Total Man,
Yeah.
oddly enough, I never had a title for it.
Right.
Now, the scout who had, as it were, found me, a friend of mine, Eddie Luttbach, who, by the way, is now Professor of Armaments at Washington University and was a big advisor to, now who's the sort of German American government Minister of Defense was? Who's the one I'm talking about? Oh God! Anyway, you know his name perfectly well. But he was this guy's right-hand man,
Kissinger.
Eddie. Kissinger, yeah, Kissinger.
Yeah.
Anyway, Eddie eventually got to be Kissinger's right-hand advisor, and he knows all about armaments. Anyway, Eddie was a scout for Penguin books in those days. And he said to me, have you ever thought of writing a book? And I said, well, I have got one in my head, which was Total Man. So anyway, he talked to me about it, and I told him, the sort of general terms it was going to be. And he spoke to Penguin, and Penguin immediately wrote to me and said, here's 500 quid, do it. So I did it. Now, I didn't have a title. I've never had that problem in my life with anything ever. I didn't have a title for it. I couldn't think of a title. And Eddie said to me, how about Total Man? And I said, oh yeah, that's fine, great, fine. Now, little did I know that the director of Penguin in those days had just written a book himself. Oh, not just written. He was getting ready to publish a book of his own, which he'd written, called Total War.
All right.
That's where he got the idea, Total Man.
Yeah.
Now, the two books would have come out simultaneously. So the director of Penguin, said, well, we can't have this. We can't have two books with so similar. The reps will get confused, and people will say, well, hang on, which one is, what's this? Now, instead of them coming to me and saying, look, you can't use Total Man. We've already got a title, Total War. So can you think of another one? No, they didn't tell me a word of this. They just wrote to me and said, we cannot publish your book for 18 months, full stop. Now, I knew nothing about publishing in those days. I had no agent. So I thought, well, shit, what can I do? I assumed it was some scheduling problem they had or what.
Yeah.
Financial problem, I don't know. So they put it back 18 months. So that was 18 months. Well, it would have taken 6 months to publish. So we're talking a year lost because of this title.
Yeah.
But what kind of coincidence is that? That Eddie gives me I can't think of a title. Eddie gives me a title which is similar to this one he's heard
Yeah.
from the director. And instead of them coming to me and saying we have a title problem here,
Yeah.
they just put the book back a year. And that was my first, as it were, setback.
Yeah.
And it's gone on like that ever since. Always some combination of events that you'd say was too far-fetched to put in a novel. You'd say, oh, that's too far-fetched, you can't put that in.
No.
Yeah, it's not true. And
What was your best-selling book?
the best seller, I think, The Paranormal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was published in America as well, and in paperback in America.
Yeah.
They thought Total Man would be a bestseller. I didn't go there, but apparently in New York, it was the centerpiece of every bookshop in New York,
Yeah.
and nobody bought it. But again, that's my luck, as it were. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't come off. It doesn't work out.
No, but I think the people who have read it, and I mean, I certainly see it up there along with sort of Collins Mysteries of that sort of ilk, that sort of size, and just the weight of it is totally impressive, without even lifting a page, it's just the work in it. I think I think Total Man's a great book.
Yes, I get lots of letters about that. That's probably the one I get most on.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, through an acquaintance of mine around here who does the internet and everything,
Yeah.
he was contacted, or he somehow got in touch with a guy in Australia who said Total Man changed the lives of him and his friends when they were young students. It altered their lives completely. And I get lots of stuff like that from people. But as I say, in terms of sales, nothing dramatic ever.
Yeah.
Never. You probably know that of writers, 90% have to have a job. 90% of writers have another job.
Yeah.
They can't make a living. 8% of writers make some kind of living, and I was one of those. You just about get by.
Yeah.
And only 2% make a good living, and of course they make a very good living because they're the best sellers.
Yeah.
But 90% of writers have another job.
Yeah.
It's not easy to make money
No.
out of books,
I
not
can
easy.
believe that. I mean, when we put the Giant out, we funded that ourselves.
Yeah,
We had 1,000 pressed up, but we thought, with Colin being involved and Julian Cope and people
Yeah.
like that it would sell like hotcakes. But it's selling, but we've not even got anywhere near breaking even yet.
not yet, no.
Well, a long
No.
way off.
But you've been doing gigs and things, haven't you?
But we
Touring.
did one gig.
Yeah.
We're not really a band as such, because
No.
the other two guys are actually playing a rock band, and they tour
Yeah.
and play all over the world. So it's just a part-time thing.
Yeah.
When we do it, really just, it would be nice if we made some money out of it one day, but
Yeah.
we do it mainly just for the fact
Because
that
you want to, yeah.
we enjoy doing it.
Yeah,
I have a
yeah.
job, and Simon has a job, and
Yeah.
it's just something we do
Yeah.
just because we enjoy doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
as simple as that.
I think with the internet as well, you can see you've got the prospect of it selling steadily.
Yeah.
You know it's not going to be, the shutters won't come down on it.
Yeah. Over time, yeah.
So that's
It's
the
there.
advantage, really.
But like the website that we've got, I mean, it's averaging sort of like 16,000 people looking at it each month,
Yeah.
but only 2 people are buying the disc
Yeah.
each month.
Yeah.
So it's an incredible sort of medium, but it's not that powerful that it allows you to sell vast quantities.
But I'm told by, I've got this book in print on the internet now, The Paranormal, and the publisher told me that once they put a book onto the internet, it's there it's there forever,
Yeah.
because it's costing them nothing to keep it available.
That's right.
So you never go out of print. Once you're on the internet with something, it's
Yeah.
there forever.
Yeah, published forever. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's handy in the sense that it's a small turnover over many years adds up, But the Paranormal, I was going to shut the door.
Yeah.
Sorry. The Paranormal isn't selling on the internet particularly well. I mean, they've sold a few hundred copies. But what's happened, which is absolutely typical again, I mean, I have this incredible power to do this. Crow Street Press were going to publish 3 of my books last year. They published The Paranormal and not the others, and they published nothing since. And they've always been delayed. They paid me advances for 2, which is $250, and they've been slow about paying that. And then I was due to get $50 more on the sales of The Paranormal during the second half of last year, and They only sent it to me about a week ago.
Right.
They're so hard up, they can't even send me $50. Now, they've obviously hit a stone wall, and I know why. It's because they took me on. I'm serious.
Yeah.
They were obviously doing okay before that, and they can't afford to publish the rest of my books at the moment.
Yeah.
They were going to do 3 last year. They've done 1.
Yeah.
And
So you think it's just a sort of bad luck thing? This.
well, I think it's more than that. There's some guy up there who does the scripts, and he wrote my script and said, this has got to be 100% bad one.
Yeah.
And the script's already written. Somebody's organised it. It can't be chance. Can't be chance.
You don't think so?
I could go on forever about this. Do you know the Marion Foundation in America? You heard of them?
Oh, you mentioned it in the letter because they sent you a phone, didn't they? Is that right?
That's right. They gave me a mobile.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. Let me just. Am I sort of messing this up?
No, you're right.
All right. I think it's here. Yeah. Now this was the first letter. This guy Baldwin is one of the directors of the Marion Foundation, which is to do with metahistory, among other things. Metahistory means outside history, history which isn't in the history books.
Okay.
Now that was the first letter I had from him. Have a look at that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Show it to Simon.
Yeah.
He actually sent me $500, which was quite handy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then he contacted me on behalf of the Marion Foundation and said, we'd like to do an interview with you.
Yeah.
Can you come to London? And I said, I wrote back, I can't really make that effort, but if you send me the questions, I'll write the interview,
Yeah.
So they sent me questions and I wrote the answers, sent them back. They first contacted me at November a year ago.
Yeah.
And they wanted me to go at Christmas to do the interview, and I said I couldn't. Okay, so then they contacted me in January after I sent the written interview, and they said, we're absolutely delighted with this, so much so we want to make it the centrepiece of our presentation, our annual presentation.
Yeah.
But we must see you. We've got to talk detail, we must see you. Can you come to London? Yeah. So I said, all right. So I made the effort. And in the spring of last year, I went to London and met John Lash, who is an author, and he's one of their representatives. And they recorded a conversation with me. And that was that. And then a couple of months went by and I hadn't heard anything. So I wrote to John and I said, how's the interview going? What's happening? No reply. Yeah. And a couple of months after that, I realised this is, item 78,000 in the endless list. And I wrote to both Michael Baldwin and John Lash and said, why did you decide not to use the interview? Just interested to know. Didn't get a reply from either of them.
Really?
Now, can you, in view of that letter,
Yeah.
can you believe this?
No, not really.
Yeah. So I haven't heard a word from them, and the whole thing's obviously been dumped. But why?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, you can't invent an explanation.
No.
So this is so relentless, this kind of thing, that's one of the factors why I've given up, because the script's already been written, and they've said nothing must work, and that's how it is.
We'll get this track done, I promise you.
Yeah, well,
We'll probably die in a car crash
we'll
on the
see.
way back.
Yes, something like that. Yeah. Or it'll be Britain's first earthquake. Yeah, something like that. But it is amazing.
Yeah. What did you feel earlier on? I mean, it sounds as though you kind of have sort of fated to have sort of had when you were an academic earlier on. Was that the same?
Let me think about that.
You wrote a book called The
No,
Asphyxic
I had
Smile.
plenty of chances as a straight, whatever academic. I mean, I was offered when I decided to leave the National Bureau. They offered me the directorship. They said, "You want director of the National Children's Bureau?"
Yeah.
And then, when eventually I wrote Total Man, Penguin showed it to the professor of psychology at Brunel University, and he came to see me. And he said, I'm about to retire. Do you want my job? He said, it's yours. I could have been professor of psychology at Brunel University. And I said, nah, I don't want a job anymore. Don't want any more jobs. So I had plenty of opportunities in the straight world, plenty.
Yeah.
and I turned them all down because I wanted to do my thing, you know.
Yeah.
So academically, no, I can't complain. You know, everything in that area was perfectly all right.
Yeah.
It's just that I dumped it all because I wanted to do my thing,
Yeah.
and that's the alternative script, which is the bad one, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember, cause I used to work in a health promotion department, and in the library there, I think one of the first books of yours I saw was it called The Asthmatic Child or something like
Yeah, the child with asthma.
Child
yeah,
with Asthma.
yeah,
I remember that. And I didn't make the link to start with that it was you that had written
Yeah.
that. I've not read that actually, but
Well, I wrote 2 textbooks, of which that's one. That's a short one. There's a much longer one, which I wrote when I was, you know, research psychologist, and both those textbooks became required reading on university degree courses.
Yeah.
You know, you had to read them.
yeah,
So I've never had any problem with the straight world. It's the other world I'm in,
yeah.
you know, which I chose, where everything just goes wrong.
Are those
permanently.
books still being published, or
If they are, I don't know, but I don't get any royalties or anything.
Don't
No. There was no, you know, I wrote them as an employee of the National Bureau,
yeah,
and they're their books. You know, I don't get any royalties.
yeah,
I mean, I never thought about those things in those days. Possibly, I could have said, "Well, I want royalties," and I might have got them.
yeah?
But I never bothered with anything like that. I just thought it's part of my job, you know. So
yeah,
I never,
I see.
never tried to
No,
capitalise on those at all.
yeah,
But no, so everything went okay on the straight side. It's the alternative side where everything is all wrong.
right.
Yeah.
So, if you had a computer, say, would you be able to? Would you?
No, Collins offered me. He's written again. He said, "Why don't you take this computer I've offered you?" He's offered me a computer, and
Yeah.
so have other people.
Yeah,
I can't be bothered. You know, I just feel I'm not prepared to do anything without a major miracle.
yeah,
Then
you
I'll
need to
do all
change the
these things. Yeah.
circumstances of the whole thing.
I'm not prepared to fiddle. You know.
No,
Is it-
that needs to be right, doesn't it?
I mean, even my typewriter doesn't work now, and I can't be bothered to get another one. You know, just
Yeah.
sod it. So I handwrite everything now.
What about
Can't-
getting one of these little recorders and just recording things that you've thought about? And
I could do that, perhaps. Yeah, I could.
that might be a good way of sort of. It'd be quite an instant thing, wouldn't it? It would be a lot of effort involved just to.
Yeah, on the whole, I prefer to scribble. You know.
Well, you do that anyway, I guess, do you?
Well, as I say, I've written many letters and so on, and I have scribbled a few other things too. Yes, there's a lot of stuff down there which is ready for use, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not. I mean, David Percy of Aulis, he's got an estate in the south of France, and he's offered me the use of a cottage permanently, free, if I write the book. You know, and he'll publish it.
Yeah.
It's not enough. You know, it's not enough of a change,
No.
and to make the effort of getting there. You know,
Whereabouts is that?
south of France,
Right.
Charente-Maritime, something.
Wow, sounds great.
Oh, I know. Oh no, I mean it's a good opportunity, and he said I can have the cottage as long as I like and whatever. But no, that's too much effort. And you see, what I want is not to have to make more effort. I want something to happen that I haven't had to do, so to speak.
Yeah, I see what
I
you're saying.
can't make the effort. You know, it's got to make itself, so that I can say, well, the scriptwriter's obviously given up his job up there.
You need to see the sort of the end.
Well,
Well,
if he changes the script, I'll go along with it. But he's got to change the script. I can't change it. But yeah.
What about you? Have family at all anywhere, or?
Well, I've got a niece and a nephew in Canada somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know where they are. I can't even remember their first bloody names, honestly. Remember their surname.
Yeah.
And they've got children
Yeah.
and whatever. So I've got relatives in that sense. But
You don't keep in touch.
I don't know where they are. No.
No.
It was I who broke off contact with them. You know, not
Yeah.
they didn't break off contact with me. But where they are, I don't know.
Where did you originate from? What?
London.
For London?
Yeah, born in London
Yeah.
and grew up in London. Yeah.
Yeah.
But my sister, although like my brother, she was badly physically handicapped.
Yeah.
They both had a very rare genetic disease.
Mm.
They were cases 6 and 7, and after case 5 they name a disease. So my brother and sister were responsible for whatever this disease is being named, because they were cases 6 and 7. And it's, you know, they've got physical abnormalities that get worse as they get older. My brother was pretty bad. I mean, he had a spinal jacket and leg braces when he was a teenager, you know. My sister survived a bit better. She always had very thin legs, and she kept breaking her feet, you know. But anyway, she was normal enough for long enough to get married, and she had 2 kids. And then she died in the middle of that, to take her legs off, you know, to amputate her legs, because the disease got worse.
Yeah.
The genetic disease. Yeah. So anyway, that was another remarkable thing, having a brother and sister, both of whom had this incredibly rare genetic disease. Yeah. That was a strange thing. Anyway, so I've got family, but where they are, I don't know, and they don't know where I am now. You know.
Right.
So.
You keep in good health?
Well,
I read somewhere
again,
you broke your arm or something, and
yeah, I fell over a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Well, in November actually, and that's going back a bit, and broke my arm, and I didn't know it was broken. I mean, it felt bad, and I just ignored it, and it didn't go away. It got worse, and then I had to go to the hospital, and they X-rayed and said it's broken. You know.
Right.
But they put that right, more or less. No, physically, I've always been okay, pretty much. Yeah. And that, I think, again, is in the script, because if I were to get ill or die or something, you know, then I wouldn't, you know, they couldn't stick the pins in, you know what I mean? You've got to have the living model to give it the pain.
Yeah,
you know?
I see what you're saying.
So
yeah.
No, that side of things has been okay.
Yeah. How old are you now?
72 now.
72.
Yeah.
Oh, about the same as Colin, would you say?
Yep, about the same, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. As oddly enough, it's my birthday tomorrow.
Is it?
And it's the 13th of June, and the incredible thing is how important 13 is in my books. And I was born on the 13th of June. Yeah.
It's of course 13
yeah.
When you go, that's right, because you go over a lot of the stuff that people have like, again, probably as you say, you sort of preempted a lot of this sort of ideas about 13 and the way the Gospels came about and so on.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible to me that nobody ever comments on the fact that Christ and the 12 disciples, King Arthur and the 12 knights, Robin Hood and the 12 merry men, nobody's ever said, hang on, there's a group of 13. Nobody's ever noticed 13. This or commented on it. Yeah. You know, yeah. But as you know, there are 13 new moons, 13, either 13 new moons or 13 full moons in each alternate year. And women menstruate, ovulate 13 times a year, you know, alternately. Yeah. And what, again, a subject never discussed is how is it the moon influences our, you know, human menstrual cycle, but not of any other ape? How did that come into being so late, and why? Yeah. It's never discussed anywhere. But recent research has shown that a majority of women today, even under modern conditions, the majority ovulate at full moon and menstruate at new moon. The majority. Even under modern day conditions. And a woman can regularise her periods if they're wrong by having a light on in a cupboard on certain nights of the month, which acts as the moon. So, you know.
Incredible.
And yet it's never discussed. Have you ever seen it discussed or even mentioned?
Really. No. I tend to think things like this, though, tend to... well, we were talking earlier on about sort of modern culture, and it's not geared towards anything intellectual these days, is it? I mean, if you put the TV on or read the newspaper, it's, you know, the lowest common denominator now that's used to entertain
this is true. This is true. But academics, you'd think would still want to pursue things, but they don't pursue these matters. You know, they just don't.
No, people spend most of the time pursuing matters that have already been pursued, really, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, the obvious, even. I mean, I read something which was quite extraordinary the other day, and somebody had been doing a 5-year survey and had come to the conclusion that breastfeeding was better than bottle feeding. And I'm thinking, do we really need to be told that?
Yeah, who's surprised?
Yeah, who's surprised?
Absolutely.
And I read somewhere about underarm deodorant, you know, the fact that it was possibly linked to cancer.
Yeah.
I was thinking, well, you know, putting a chemical under your armpits every day for the majority of your life, surely that's just a daft thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just common sense, and that it's sometimes somebody will present a new or innovative theory,
Yeah.
it's just common sense.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I agree actually.
And it always seems to be that. There's a big headline that this is bad for you. You're joking. You knew that, or anybody with any sense knew it.
Yeah.
And that common sense, that human nature, that was common to ancient people. It's just because of, I don't know whether it's because of civilizations that we live in or the culture that we live in, but it's gone out the window.
Yeah. No.
Do mothers need to be told that breastfeeding's better for their babies? I guess they do these days. It's sad, isn't it? Sad state of affairs.
Do you want a glass of wine, Stan? I've got some wine in the car.
No, actually, I don't drink anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I used to drink heavily, but I don't drink anymore. No, you guys. I was going to say, do you want tea then, or you'd rather have the wine, whichever you like?
I have tea actually. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm all right for the moment.
All right, yeah, okay.
So, so do you want to talk a bit about the ideas behind your
The
Mayday?
The next effort, if it ever happens. Well, yeah. One of the things I want to do is to pull together all the various items, sort of summarise the things I've said, because it's a very broad area, lots of different things, and bring it into focus, so to speak. And then mention lots of things that have come out which are supportive. Like I say, Neanderthal was totally promiscuous, right? No pair bonding and completely promiscuous sexually. And now they've discovered the bonobos chimpanzees in Africa. They're pygmy chimpanzees. And guess what? They're totally promiscuous. They all screw each other all the time. It's led by women, which is what I say about Neanderthal, led by the females. The females lead it. And by the way, the promiscuity includes paedophilia. Paedophilia is normal among bonobos chimpanzees. Anyway, so these chimpanzees are a model for what I said Neanderthal society was, which is a hell of a piece of luck, right, in quotes. How lucky can you get, kind of thing. Now, another thing which has come out, and of course I said, as you know, I say Neanderthal was left-handed. It's now been established statistically there is considerably more left-handedness among homosexuals and lesbians than in the general population. So that's very supportive of my view, because, as it were, illicit sex, promiscuous sex and left-handedness clearly go together. I suspect that paedophiles also have more left-handedness, but I've written to a few scientists about that. They don't even reply. Said, will you look into that? Because I think they probably are. I think that's a bit too politically incorrect at the moment, Now, hang on, what else was I going to say about that? Left-handed is promiscuity. Oh, yeah, and you can't say, oh, well, in that case, perhaps left-handers are more female. Because, by the way, it's well established that very few left-handed men go bald. Baldness and right-handedness go together. Left-handedness and not baldness, the great mop of hair. So you could say, oh, well, these men must be, the homosexuals and all that, must be more feminine. No, because in fact there are fewer left-handed women in every society, in every ethnic group in the world. Fewer left-handed women. So you can't say these left-handed men are feminine. There's no link with left-handedness and women in that sense. Actually, one of the reasons why I think there are fewer left-handed women, I would have expected more, actually, them to be more, is because, and I know this sounds mad, so many women, left-handed women, were killed as witches during the last 2,000 years. Now, you may say, oh, hang on, a few hundred women killed. No. One estimate has said 9 million women were killed throughout Europe and the Middle East as witches. 9 million. Now, I think that's a bit too high, because the total population of this country in Shakespeare's day, in medieval times, was only 2 million, the total population. So you're asking 9 million, even if you take the whole of Europe, it's a lot. But estimates of 2 or 3 million are common. The people who estimate the death of witches say 2 or 3 million over the period. Now that would be enough, if a lot of them were left-handed, to have affected the genetic, so that there are fewer left-handed women. Now, my guess is that there were originally more, that left-handedness was probably the female thing. Now, anyway, what else was I going to say? the stuff that's coming out. I didn't know until fairly recently that the moon is left-handed. The sun, seen from Europe or China or Russia or wherever, the Middle East, seen from the southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere, sorry, seen from the northern hemisphere, the moon rises in the west and sets in the east. In other words, it circles the globe anti-clockwise. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It circles the globe clockwise. So, you know, they worship the moon among other things because it's left-handed. It does the left-handed movement. Because if you ask a left-handed person to spin, they spin anti-clockwise. You know, if you ask them to dance in a circle, they'll dance anti-clockwise. Yeah. And witches, of course, dance anti-clockwise during their ceremonies. It's the natural movement for a left-hander.
So, have anything to do with about water going down plug holes one way and then the other?
I haven't looked into that, but it's in Australia. It goes down the other way.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Ours goes clockwise, doesn't it?
Yes.
I think it does.
Yeah.
But down in Australia, it goes anti-clockwise. Yes, that's that is true. Yeah. But you know, the right-handed movement is the natural thing for right-handers. You know, that is that circular movement is.
People used to dance in an anti-clockwise direction around churches, didn't they? With witches.
That's right, and they got burnt for it. So, as I say, I suspect that possibly that the witchcraft thing, and that's our historical version of it, of course, but I suspect that for tens of thousands of years, the Cro-Magnon has been killing off left-handed women anyway, because they were probably more spooky, you know, probably more mediumistic and whatever. And if they gave you a bad fortune, you know, bad fortune telling, you'd come back and kill them. So they caused it, you know, whatever. Anyway, so moon is left-handed. I didn't know that till fairly recently. I think it's in Citizen's Dreams, I'm not sure. But I didn't know that years ago, you know. Yeah. Now, what else has come up recently that's important? My mind's gone blank now.
Right.
But I will, as I say, in this new book, if I ever do it, I will mention all the various bits of research that have come out recently supporting my views. Yeah. I mean, the bonobo chimpanzees are excellent material. You know, but again, nobody comments on it and says, well, hang on, why are they so different from other chimpanzees? You know, other chimpanzees, although they don't pair bond, they behave pretty normally. Yeah. You know, they don't, as far as I know, they don't screw the children. They don't have, there's no paedophiles among ordinary chimpanzees, as far as I know. No. But
I think in what was it in Guardians of the Ancient Wisdom? I think it was in that you talked about the Jews and the Arabs being, I can't remember which was which now. I think you suggested that one was a Cro-Magnon race and one was a Neanderthal.
Well, it's the image I use is of you're standing. There's a long line of arches, right? And you're in the middle somewhere, and the arches are painted red on one side and blue on the other. So if I say to you, those arches down there, you say, oh, they're all red. Those arches, they're all blue. If you move, the red ones become blue. Yeah. If you go that way, the blue ones become red. Okay, it depends where you're standing. Sure. Now, in overall terms, both the Jews and the Arabs are Neanderthal, no question of it. But going down through the arches till you come to those two together, the Jews are more Cro-Magnon than the Arabs. The Arabs are more Neanderthal than of the two groups. But as they basically looked at from the European point of view, they're both Neanderthal, you know. Yeah. But in terms of each other, I think they're fighting out the Cro-Magnon Neanderthal bit between themselves. You know, the Arabs perceive the Jews as Cro-Magnon, and Cro-Magnon, the Jews perceive the Arabs as Neanderthal. And that's what I think that's all about, that conflict. Yeah.
Has anybody else ever looked into that, or is that?
I don't know anybody that talks in these terms at all, because a lot of scientists still deny interbreeding, although it cannot really be denied because, as I say, you know, as I've said, many others, you can see Neanderthal around you. How could that Cro-Magnon head have become this guy? You know,
I suppose it also it would be quite controversial research to undertake, wouldn't it? Especially if you're in the Middle Eastern situation.
Well,
You're looking at, you don't have to do much to upset, certain groups.
I don't think. I don't know whether you need any research as such. I mean, if, as I claim, all these characteristics hang together, short big toe, left-handedness, short height, short-sightedness, if all these things hang together, that is proof that we have two species, right-handedness, long sight, tallness, short sight, shortness, blah blah. So all we would need to do would be to compare Arabs and Jews to see, if these characteristics are available in the proportions I would suggest. But you don't need to take them as an example. I mean, you could take a much better example, like Welsh and English. That would be a perfect comparison in my view, because since I've been here, I'm quite sure the left-handedness in Wales is almost double that of England. There's less baldness. I'm sure there's more short big toes. I've been in the years I've been looking around at all these things, and of course the bushy eyebrows and all these things. I think if you compared the Welsh and English, you'd get the perfect match for what I'm talking about. And once you've done it on that basis, then all the others fall into place. You don't have to worry anymore. You've proved it between these two groups. Yeah. And as I say, I'm quite sure that, think about the Welsh, short height, whatever. And they have more, and of course, culturally, the bigger part a dragon plays, and the more positively you view the dragon, that is proof of a Neanderthal ancestry. And of course the Chinese, like the Welsh, have a lot to say about the dragon, and they actually like it, really, although they do condemn it in some ways. It's clearly respected. Yeah. And indeed in Wales it's on the flag, they like it. So that's, for me, that's proof of the Neanderthal ancestry. Now what was I going to say about dragons? Something else about dragons. Oh, it's gone. But anyway, the dragon for me is more proof that the Welsh culture is. Oh, and by the way, the Welsh royal family traces its ancestry through the feminine line, just like the pharaohs. Again, proof of Neanderthal, because as a Neanderthal, you knew who your mother was, but you were never sure who your father was, because totally promiscuous, no pair bonding, and so that's why the ancient Egyptians and the Welsh traced through the feminine line, because they go back to a time when that was the only proof you had. You knew your mother, but you had no proof of your father. No.
That's right. The dragon's interesting, really, isn't it? Because a lot of people think that the Uffington White Horse is possibly a dragon put onto the hillside.
Yeah.
And quite interestingly, in Lincolnshire, where I live, if you follow that limestone ridgeway, it goes east and then goes north, and follow it up through Lincolnshire. Yeah. Right at the end of that ridgeway, there's a place called Dragonby.
Oh, yes.
And there's a stone dragon on the hillside.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you've heard of it before, but the dragon is a petrified stream. Yeah. And the stream zigzags down the hillside, and over the years, sand has blown into it, and it's become petrified. And you've actually got not something that resembles a dragon, but actually is a dragon, like in the grass, and it's right on the other end of that ridgeway.
That's interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
You sort of think that maybe the white horse was misinterpreted, and maybe it was a dragon shape.
Well, I think it could well be, yeah.
The dragon was prevalent.
Yeah. But what the dragon is, I don't know if I've actually, I can't remember whether I've said this in any of the books so far. What the dragon is, you see, Neanderthal worshipped the moon, right? Yeah. Now, the moon is feminine for all kinds of reasons that we've already mentioned. Which are the two most feared animals, as it were, in Europe or wherever you want to take it? The snake and the spider. They're the ones that are disliked most. And they happen to be the only two species where the female is larger than the male. So clearly Neanderthal thought highly of them, because Neanderthal culture was led by women, ruled by women. They said these two species are special because they have a larger female. Okay, and there's in many cultures, the moon and the spider and the snake. You know, the spider and the snake are identified with the moon. This is, you know, not me saying it. It's quite well known. Now, and the reason why they're associated with the moon, which nobody's ever thought of, is because the female is larger than the male in those two species and not in any other species. Now, given that the moon is a snake, and given that, well, you see, water is the moon, non-water is the sun, for obvious reasons. When it's raining, the sun isn't there. Also, the moon affects the tides, right? The moon causes the tides. So the moon and water are, the moon rules the water, the sun doesn't. The sun rules the desert, you know, the sun is dryness. Okay, and lightning, you tend to get thunderstorms and lightning when it's raining. Not absolutely, but as you know, lightning and rain are associated. So, for me, the snake with its forked tongue and the fact that lightning and the water and the moon are put together, the dragon is a snake and the fire is the lightning, the forked tongue.
The way it's
And of course the forked tongue looks like lightning.
Yeah.
You know, the snake's forked tongue. So this is what the dragon is. It's a snake, you know, spitting lightning.
Well, I suppose sort of like Christian icons like George versus the dragon just depicts that, well, good versus evil.
Well, this is Cro-Magnon against Neanderthal
Yeah.
again. You see, George is Cro-Magnon and the dragon is Neanderthal. Yeah. But as I say, nobody's got any idea why a creature should breathe fire. You know, but if you think of the snake and lightning, and the fact that the snake is larger than, you know, the female is larger and it's identified with the moon worldwide, well, there you've got the origin of the dragon, in my opinion. You know. And that's, again, something I would like to put clearly in this new book, you know. Yeah, I'm trying to think of these other items which have come up recently, which support my views. I've written letters about them, but they've gone out my head again now. But there is quite a lot of stuff that's come up that either directly or indirectly supports my views, you know.
It was red ochre thing, wasn't it, about the red ochre being used in burials and
Yes, indeed, but that's oh yeah, I mean that's fine, but I've already said that. But I'm trying to think of the items which have come up in recent years, which support me. Oh, of course, Neanderthal being red-haired, you know about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that is now established, whereas I was saying it, what, 20, 25 years ago. So Neanderthal and red hair, that's something that I would emphasise very strongly in the new book.
Yeah, you sent me a clipping, didn't you, that some professor, I can't remember his name now, had made that statement recently, and you'd actually said it a long time ago.
Oh yeah, there was an article in the Times. Did I send you a copy of that? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that would figure, obviously. And another thing which is not to do with directly to do with what we're talking about, but the left brain, right brain stuff has been dumped. Did I tell you that? It's been dumped about 4 years ago. The scientific establishment, you know, Roger Sperry produced the left brain, right brain hypothesis. Yeah. Got the Nobel Prize for it. Yeah. I said it was no good in Double Helix of the Mind and in an article in the New Scientist, which fortunately I've got copies of. And it's now been dumped. It's no good. They've done some very careful experiments showing that both sides of the brain do the mathematical bit, which he claimed only one side did. Yeah. And in fact, that some of the mathematical stuff is only done by the wrong side, so to speak. You know, the side, he said, had nothing to do with mathematics. Yeah. So the whole thing's been dumped. So I was right about that. Now, it's not doesn't directly affect my Neanderthal Cro-Magnon thesis, except that, of course, I say cerebellum is responsible for all the alternative stuff, not one or other of the main hemispheres. And Neanderthal had a larger cerebellum than Cro-Magnon, you know, much larger. Oh, and coming back to the Chinese, that's reminded me, they, of course, have a much larger cerebellum than Europeans, and left-handedness is almost double in China what it is in Europe. So once again we have the fact that the Chinese worship the dragon and they have double the left-handedness. You know, all these coincidences, as it were. Yeah. I mean, this is circumstantial evidence. It's not, as it were, scientific in the normal sense. But there's such a mass of circumstantial evidence to support my view that only if they want to defeat me, they've got to do proper surveys.
Yeah.
They can't just say, oh, well, that doesn't count. Because, like when you go to court, if you produce circumstantial evidence, strong circumstantial evidence, whoever's involved, the defendant or the prosecutor, they have to do something about that evidence. There's too much of it, too much circumstantial evidence to ignore. Yeah. And that is the case, that there's a mass of circumstantial evidence. I mean, as I say that Neanderthal was left-handed, and of course he had a larger cerebellum. These are, and the Chinese have a larger cerebellum than Europeans and are more left-handed. How lucky you are that these things are, work out. So all that I would put in very simple terms in the new book. And also, what I want to do is to use the book to get students to go to their various professors and lecturers and say, look, excuse me, sir, madam, what is your answer to this? Why is it, if you claim there is no interbreeding between... before we get to that, every Cro-Magnon footprint and fossil so far found shows the big toe longer than the second toe. Every Neanderthal footprint and fossil so far found shows the big toe shorter than the second toe. Now, if you, the lecturer, deny that we are a hybrid, how is it that some of us have a shorter big toe? How did that come into being? How did some Cro-Magnons develop a short big toe in the last few thousand years? What's your answer to that, sir? Can you explain? Unless it was interbreeding. And so I'm going to try and talk direct to all the students and say, look, go to your lecture and ask for an answer, and don't take waffle. Say, no, come on, sir, you've got to have a hard reason for this. You've got to give us a reason why. So I want to make it a kind of revolutionary book, as it were, sort of not quite Green Party thing, but appeal to the alternatives.
Yeah. So you say that there was interbreeding between Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal. Do you think that interbreeding was? I mean, do you think that the two species, we call them species, I guess, are compatible? I mean, obviously they mated, but was that?
No, I don't think they. There may have been some. There may have been some normal. Sorry.
Consensual mating, or would that have been?
There might have been some. Yeah. But in my opinion, most of it was rape and enslavement.
Yeah.
The hybrid was produced, as it were, by accident. Yeah. That they screwed the Neanderthal women, and some of them escaped and produced children, and they kept some as slaves, as concubines. And that's how the hybrid arose. I think it was largely in the context of rape and enslavement, not a genuine coming together.
No. I suppose that would account if you're saying that the Chinese have got the majority of left-handed people, etc. Then they're very much a self-contained country, aren't they? They tend to keep within themselves, although they, as a nation, they tend to keep their culture very tight and pure, and you don't find them they expand individually, they go across the world, but they're quite a contained nation.
Yeah, they are, genetically fairly self-contained, but there is a big problem actually with the various sub-varieties of human beings. I mean, you see, Neanderthal was red-haired, well, the Chinese are black-haired.
Yeah.
So how did that come? And Cro-Magnon was blonde. Yeah. So you've got lots of sub-problems. It's not an easy scenario.
No,
I think there were other sub-varieties of Neanderthal as well as the main one.
Sure.
And, there may even have been sub-varieties of Cro-Magnon. It's not just a clean, straightforward picture.
No.
But interestingly enough, the Chinese have a lot of legends about red-haired people. Well, where do they come from, given that they have no red hair?
But it was suggested quite recently, weren't they, that red-haired people were from the northern territories. Have you got any thoughts on that? Do you think that's possible?
Well, certainly, red-haired Neanderthal in Europe lived in Central and Northern Europe, certainly.
Yeah.
And Cro-Magnon invaded via the Middle East, not from Africa in my opinion, but nevertheless through the Middle East.
Yeah.
Probably from Asia they came originally, in my view, but they came into Europe from the lower right-hand corner and moved up and took it over, gradually pushing Neanderthal further north and west.
Yeah.
So red hair, yes, in my opinion, is a northern thing in your sense. You've got to remember
associate
too.
with the Scots, don't you? And the
Oh, the Welsh and Scots and Irish have
Yeah.
much more red hair.
Yeah.
That's another thing, but I didn't mention that earlier. That of course there are far more redheads in Wales than in England. So once again, assuming I'm right about the left-handedness and the short big toe, and naturally the dragon, you've got the red hair as well. You know, it all hangs together circumstantially very well,
yeah.
and the short height. And the barrel body, you know, the picnic body type. You know, there are scientists say there are three main body types, or some scientists say three, some say two. I'm the one. I agree with the two people. There's the tall athletic type, and the short fat type, the non-athletic, you know, the picnic barrel body. But there is another type called asthenic, which is skinny. You know, the very skinny person with narrow shoulders.
Yeah.
Now I say that is a sub-variety of Cro-Magnon. I say, you know, it's a version of the tall athletic, you know, an undernourished version. But some scientists claim three. You know, there are three different groups, whereas I want two different groups. I only want the two. You know, I want the tall, athletic ones and the short, fat ones.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Welsh body type is certainly much closer to Neanderthal than the English again. You know, so it all hangs together very well. You know. And as I say, there's so much circumstantial evidence. To defeat it, you've got to go for proof. You've got to go for proper surveys.
Yeah. I mean, that was something that Lethbridge always used to say, didn't he? It was up to him to throw the pebble into the pool, and then for others to observe the ripples.
That's right. That's right. No, I agree. I agree with that. Yeah.
I think that's a great approach, really, because I think the world needs people with ideas, and that's why I find it really, really sad that people like Lethbridge were put down and criticised, because the world needs those people to they haven't people like maybe yourself and Lethbridge, you haven't got the time to go doing this research, but what
or the means
but what you can do is throw that pebble into the pool and then leave it to the others to.
I wrote several times to the National Children's Bureau and said, look, you've got this stuff all on file. You've got data from Welsh school children, English school children. You could find some of this out. They don't even reply to my letters, let alone do anything about it. But the National Child Development Study they've got the data on file already. They've got it there already.
Well, I suppose that research...
And handedness, left-handed, right-handed, they've got all that on file.
Yeah. But I guess this research needs to be done pretty soon, really, because the way migration is going at the moment, I mean, people are moving from country to country at a far greater speed now than they used to. And, with sort of refugees moving around, I mean, the whole structure and build of
it would mess up now, but of course you can take lineage. You can say, well, we want people with Welsh grandparents, or English grandparents. They've got to have that, so you could separate them out that way. But as I say, the data's already on file. The data are already on file. I'm always telling people when they say the data is, I say, no, the data are. The data are on file. It's just got to dig it out. It's there already.
I wouldn't have thought it took too much.
They could do it by you could do it. There it is. Oh, but they don't even reply to my letters, let alone do anything about it.
Yeah.
So I would say all this in the book too. You say, look, the data exist already. It's just a question of getting them to publish it.
Yeah.
So again, I would say to students, you go to your professors and you go to the National Bureau and you say, we want this data, please. These data, sorry, it's plural, it's in data as well. I hate people who say media. The media it's media are, data are, bacteria are, so they're all plural. Anyway, but I fall into it occasionally myself and say data is, but you shouldn't. Right, what were we saying? No, you were saying something. Oh, it's gone.
I was just saying about the change in the...
now there's more mix-up, but we've got plenty of... But as I say, you could clarify it by saying, well, it's no good just living there now, and saying you're Welsh. You've got to have had Welsh grandparents. That way it sorts it out, so it sorts out the migration thing. But
so it's all archived. The data's there. It just needs somebody to come along and undertake, which somebody probably will one day, and then they'll come out with this revelation that's
coming back to Lethbridge, another excellent example, of course, is Mendel. who discovered genetics. Have I mentioned this to you before?
No.
Mendel, he was a monk, and he studied the flowers and plants in the garden and wrote things down, and said, oh, there's a pattern here. If this plant crosses with that plant, we get this. And he discovered genetics. So he gave some lectures on it. He went around saying to people, look, I've discovered these events. What about it? And he gave a few lectures. Nobody took any notice. He died in complete obscurity. 30 years later, the scientists discovered genetics. But now they call them Mendelian genetics because Mendel did it first. But complete obscurity, couldn't get anybody to listen to him. And same, so like Lethbridge, you know, what can you do? You can only try to stir people up. If they won't listen, what can you do? What could Mendel do? Nothing. But he died having discovered genetics, and now we honour him for that.
Yeah.
But of course he never knew that. So, you know, this is not uncommon, that the people who spot things don't necessarily get
Get the recognition.
yeah.
Or the credit.
And a completely irrelevant example in a sense, but it appeals to me for a reason I'll give you in a minute. Nothing to do with science, of course, but Van Gogh. Do you know how many paintings he sold in the whole of his life? How many?
One or two.
One.
Yeah.
One. To his brother.
Yeah.
Today he holds the record at Sotheby's, the auction record at Sotheby's.
Yes.
Now, why I am very involved with Van Gogh is because in Dutch, my name and his are pronounced identically. It's Van Gogh, Stan Hoog. And I have this joke about, because one of my books was translated into Dutch, I have this joke about a guy goes into a Dutch bookshop and he says, you know, have you got this book? Have you this book by Stan Hoog? And the bookseller says, Van Gogh? He was a painter, you idiot. You know. Anyway. So I identify very strongly with Van Gogh because my name and his are pronounced identically in Dutch. You know, and I feel we're again doomed to the same fate. But he sold one painting in his whole life, just one, to his brother. And you know, what can you say? You see, that's the point. If you're so far ahead or so different, you can't get a hearing, you can't get a foothold, you can't get, you know.
There's no, yes, there's an academic won't pursue any of the ideas because there's no link, is there? It's too far ahead, as you say. The disciplines just tend to sort of go on very incrementally researching. And most research, like I was saying, most research grants seem to be for stuff that's already been researched. Research to keep doing the same things, and it's very difficult. Do you ever hear anything about a guy called Rupert Sheldrake?
Oh, I've met him a couple of times. Yeah.
He's some not similar ideas as yours, but he's a similar sort of tactic. His strategy of trying to get his ideas across.
Yes, he's made more progress than me in the sense that he does get regular articles around. You know, he does get some attention. Yes, I met him a few times before he really got going. You know, we met. Yes, sure, yeah. But he has had a bit of luck getting attention.
Yeah. Owners that have dogs that know when they're dogs that have owners who know when they're coming home or something.
Yeah, it's got a great long title, which I think is terrific.
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think that the sort of title, I mean, like your Mayday title is, I like it because it's so in your face, you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You come up with a title like that.
Yeah.
What was it? The Mayday is that what?
Well, Mayday is French. You speak French?
No.
Well, M apostrophe AIDER means help me in French. Midi, help me, and that's where it comes from. Mayday. But I like it also because, of course, Mayday is, for me, one of the survivors of the old moon religion. It's the Mayday festival is really a moon festival for me. So, but Mayday means help me in French. Yeah. So that's where it comes from.
So the title of the book is sort of you're sort of saying there's an alarm. There should be an alarm.
An alarm.
You want to introduce
It's an alarm, and also help. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And so it's sort of it's anti-complacency or anti the sort of establishment in that way.
And of course, Mayday itself, as I say, you know, that ancient festival. That's another appeal I'm making, you know, towards ancient festivals, you know. So anyway, but these, the title, like everything else I do, it just came into my head. I mean, I didn't sit and think, what shall I title it? I thought, here's the title, and boom, that was it. You know.
Guarantee there'll be the book published on the same day with the same.
Say that again. What?
There won't be a book published on the same day
similar
with a similar
title.
Very
Not this time. No, not this time. No.
So you talk about this book as if it's going to happen. I mean, you know, initially you seemed a bit sort of, you know, you weren't sure, but all through this conversation, you've talked about it as if it will happen.
Well, it does exist in my head already.
Yeah.
I've got to sit and write it down
Yeah.
now, and I can't, B won't.
Yeah.
You know.
You think you will eventually? You think
Well, I would. It's conditional. I would, but something's got to change. Something dramatic has got to happen.
Yeah.
You know, because as I say, the script writer, he's got his version of the script, or she, whichever it is, has got his version of the script ready. So I'm not, you know, he's got to change his script,
Right.
and then I'll cooperate. But
Are you confident that that'll happen?
no, I'm not at all. No. But what is surprising is the activity that goes on every now and again. Now, the year before last, there was this enormous burst of activity. You know, Crow Street Press said they wanted to publish all my books. This was towards the Christmas before last. The Marion Foundation wanted to do the interview. Oh, I had a letter from a guy who was writing to every library in Britain saying, why haven't you got these books, you know. All sorts of things happened, and there was a great book, and I thought, wow, something's changed at last. But every one of those things went pear-shaped. The Marion Foundation, Crow Street Press, it all went pear-shaped. None of it fulfilled. So that was bad. And I was invited to speak, and I did in fact do it. I was invited to speak at the 14 Times annual conference. Yeah. I did actually go and do that. And that was another thing. They asked me to do that in that November, you know, of the year before last. And I did it in the spring of last year. And I've had another invitation now, actually, to speak at the Nexus. Well, it's not Nexus. It's not called Nexus. What's it called? Alternative Conference. It's the third one. They've done it twice already, but Nexus funds it and promotes it. And they've asked me to speak this November, but I wrote and said I won't be here. You know, I'll be in France writing a book. But they said, if you can't come this year, how about next year? You know. But anyway, so there are things that go on, and I've had a flood of fan mail recently from all kinds of people. There's a husband and wife, Amanda Miles and her husband, I forget his name, Dan, I think. They have been wandering about in wherever it is they live, somewhere near London. They found all kinds of artifacts and carvings which they think are an ancient civilization. And he's been trying his best to get the establishment interested in this. And he's had no luck at all. Nobody will listen to him. So anyway, I wrote, and they got in touch with me because they're admirers of mine. And you know, I said, look, you must get proper photographs taken of this, and you must send it to Horizon, send it to David Attenborough, you know, and I gave them a whole lot of people they could send
Where have
it
they
to.
found these things?
I'm trying to think where it was. It's not in London itself. They live in London, but it's near. I forget where. I've got it. It's written down somewhere. But he sent me some drawings. I wasn't very impressed with the drawings he's done of these alleged carvings and whatever. But I said, if you get proper photographs done, that will, you know, persuade people. Don't do drawings because you can always cheat on a drawing. You know, it's got to be a proper photograph. Anyway, so he's now trying this, you know, trying to get some attention on this. What else was I going to say about him and her? Oh, she's also a medium of some kind psychic. She says all things are going to go well for you. Well, they haven't yet, but there's always something going on, and I get bursts of these things, and you know, I'm surprised that, like, I told you all those references are to me on the internet.
Yeah.
Now, it turns out that there aren't anything like that many because unless you put the name in quotes,
Yeah.
the computer will pick up the two items separated in
Yeah.
an article. Like if you wrote an article about Stan Collymore
Yeah.
and Graham Gooch,
Yeah.
the computer would pick
Find
up
out.
Stan Gooch.
Yeah. You have to put them in inverted
Yeah,
commas,
you've got to
yeah.
put them into
Yeah.
commas. So it turns out the number of references to me is about 500.
Oh.
Right.
So-
But I'm still amazed.
Yeah.
500 sites with me on them,
Yeah.
and it's going up all the time.
Yeah.
It is increasing, as I said to you, but
Yeah.
not on those figures. But in the period I spoke to you about when I sent you those two items, they increased from 506 to 550 something. So it is increasing
Yeah.
quite dramatically
Yeah.
at that level. And why, I don't know.
I think the internet. I mean, it's obviously expanding it. I think, but also I think it has a great. It's a great medium for people with sort of minority interests.
Alternatives, yeah.
To
Yeah.
actually sort of
Sure.
communicate, and it keeps things
Mm.
together. It's like the Lethbridge stuff. You find,
Yeah.
the more we've done about it, the more things that have come together with Lethbridge, and there's sort of people just generally keep
Yeah.
discussions going. And
Well, also you create a network really because people put links from other things onto it, and somebody
Mm.
might follow a link and it'll end up there. And I think that's why it will always increase.
Yeah.
And I'll write a bit about the fact that I've been down to see you, and it'll the fact that I've mentioned your name
Yeah.
on our website will add another one to it and
Yeah,
draw
yeah.
people to it. So
Well, Brent Logan is establishing another site for me. There are already one or two that
Yeah.
people have set up, for me. Because Andrea Miles writes in her latest letter, are you running this site? Can I email you? And it's nothing to do with me. I didn't do it
Yeah.
at all. But anyway, Brent Logan, who's done one for me already, has persuaded. Well, not so much persuaded because you have to pay a fee, which he's insisted on paying. With some big publishing concern in America, he's putting a site for me on their network.
right.
So that's yet another one, which is devoted solely to me. But as I say, I don't know anything about these things really.
how do you keep in touch with Brent Logan and people?
Just letters. Everybody keeps saying to me, including Colin Wilson, if I could email you, but no.
Colin wasn't on email when we first met him.
No.
Were you saying the same to him?
Yeah, he apparently spends a lot of time doing it.
Yeah,
A
he
lot of
does,
time
yeah.
on the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he's a convert now.
Yeah.
So you get many visitors. You get people coming down to see you.
Well, yes and no. I mean, lots of fans have written to say they want to visit me, and I always say no. But old school friends have been turning up,
Yeah.
and there are quite a lot. But often I'm not here when they come,
Yeah.
and although I've got a phone, nobody knows that, so they can't phone me. So, basically, I'm not encouraging this activity.
No.
But there are people do come. I mean, a couple of old school friends came at Christmas, and I wasn't here
Yeah.
because they talked to the guy next door. But
Well, Colin, I mean, we talked. Well, we've known Colin how long? About 6-7 years now.
Yeah.
how did you meet him? At a conference, you said, or something?
No, we sort of just. My mum lives in Cornwall.
Yeah.
And we were down in the pub, local pub, and we were just chatting. We said, and I'd been reading Colin since the early '80s, probably. And
Yeah.
we said we'd write him a letter. We just decided to write him a letter because we were so close to him.
Yeah.
So I wrote him a letter, and then about a month later, he phoned me up and said, "Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, come down."
Ah.
So we went down and been pestering him ever since.
Well, I think he sort of took to us in a way because I think he gets a lot of people going down to see him, but a lot of people are quite intense
Yeah.
and they sort of like got theories of their own and they demand
Yeah.
things from him and
Yeah.
question him and and
Yeah.
I think people put him under a lot of pressure and when we went down we just sat down there and just idled around and I think he
Yeah.
kind of liked that really.
Yeah.
We just
Yeah.
wanted to see him. We weren't bothered about asking him anything because we'd read up most of his books anyway, so
Yeah.
we knew
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah.
And I think he sort of talked to us because we didn't put any pressure on him.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
just enjoyed him and his wife's company,
Yeah.
And so he's always invited us back. And since we started doing the Lethbridge thing, I think he's really pleased that somebody's taking on the mantle from where he started championing
yeah.
When he realised that I was interested in taking it further, he was quite keen to sort of help me and encourage me, and contributed all his spoken word and his essay and everything, which was great, quite remarkable. And I think we were talking to him once about 2 or 3 years ago about you, and he goes, "Oh, you should go and see him." And I said, "Well, we will," and he gave us your address. And it's just one of those things that you just think, "Oh, I'll get round to it one day." And I mentioned it to Julian Cope about you, and he said, "Oh, I've heard of Stan Gooch." He goes, "I think Colin Wilson mentions him in a book." I said, "Yeah." I explained, about you, and Julian didn't really pick up on it. And then Julian rang me about, I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago. No, about 2 months ago or something. And he said, "That's Stan Gooch chap." He goes, "I've been talking to somebody about Stan Gooch, and I've got to get some of his books and all this sort of thing." He said, "You really ought to go and see him." I said, "Well, we are. We've sorted it out. I wrote to you back in November and October, and I said we're gonna do it. When the weather picks up and head over there, really." So I think people, will pick up on it. Certainly through our link with Julian. I mean, Julian's got a big reputation as a musician and an author.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes our website so popular, is because we have a link directly from his
Yeah.
site to ours.
Yeah.
He's a big Lethbridge fan as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if we can get something done with the music. I mean, we don't work fast because one of the reasons is because the other guys are all professional musicians.
Yeah, you said that.
And they have work commitments, so we just fit in between, when they're not working. At I'd really like to do something similar to what we did with Colin.
Oh, fine. It's fine with me. Yeah,
and it would be great because at least you've made a step in the Mayday direction.
Yeah.
Whether you write the book or not, at least the statement
Yeah.
has been made.
Yeah.
I'd say we wouldn't put anything out that you weren't happy with. I mean, we said that to Colin. Have a listen to it.
Yeah. What I might do at some point, I'm going to put the kettle on. What I might do at some point is make photocopies of some of the letters I've written.
Yeah.
About the materials and say that will be in it.
Yes.
Yeah, one of my letters, I've got a list of things in it, and I'm saying to the scientists involved, happen, and in response to what particular pressures of evolution, how did this happen? Because Cro-Magnon came out of Africa, then, or he must have had all those characteristics. Because as you know, you can't survive in Africa without a black skin under primitive conditions, because you die of skin cancer.
Yeah.
Oh, I must come back to that with Neanderthal, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a great list of things, and this is, again, I want the students to go to their lectures and say, look, let's take each one of these in turn. How did, the dense bones, how did they become light bones? I don't know if you ever thought about this, but why are there almost no black swimmers? It's because they're dense bones, they don't swim well.
Right.
There are plenty of black footballers, black boxers. In fact, of course, with boxing and also with sprinting, the dense bones are a big help.
Yes.
Because you've got more inertia, more mass.
Yes.
And that's why they sprint faster. Because once they get going, the body weight is so dense. It's a question of mass,
Yeah.
Anyway, so why are there almost no black jockeys? Almost none, because they're heavier.
Yeah.
And our jockey needs to be light. Anyway, so how did the dense bones become light bones? For what reason? Anyway, so, and these are all going to happen simultaneously. All these changes occurred simultaneously.
Yes, it wasn't
But
an
why?
evolutionary thing, was it?
It wasn't over a period of millions of years.
No, it couldn't have evolved.
And
that
they
way.
all happened. Well, it couldn't happen. It's all bollocks.
Yeah.
And by the way, of course, on our white skin, we have all kinds of signals, like blushing.
Yeah.
Now, these signals are millions of years old. They go back to a very primitive level.
Yeah.
You can't have white skin in Africa, so how could blushing, which occurs both with women to get you sexually aroused,
Yeah.
and by the way, when they blush, the whole chest as well gets red. And just as when you're angry, you go and your chest goes red.
Yeah.
How could these signals have arisen on a black skin? They couldn't.
No.
Right?
No.
So, there's all that stuff as well.
Yes, it's
And
almost
I
like
want the lecturers and the tutors and the scientists, tell us, please sir, tell us how that happened, and
Yeah.
why. And why have you never written about it? You know?
Yeah. That's fascinating. It's quite interesting, really, isn't it? Because you always sort of do realise that there are two sort of species, really, completely.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I put the wrong switch on, naturally.
No.
It's not working yet. Oh yeah, Neanderthal and... now, the fact that red-skinned people... Oh, I hope you can manage that. I think it's all right. No, oh, hang on. Oh, it's all right. No, the loo will work,
Yeah.
but you have to... Oh, it doesn't work well, and I've got to alter it in a minute. But it'll be all right this time. Yes, you couldn't have... Oh, I thought... Oh no, so you've gone to the loo.
What's he doing? Get some out of the car.
No, because the loo overflows, so I have to be careful. I have to make sure it doesn't overflow. But it'll be all right.
Yeah.
It'll be all right. Yeah. Even in Europe, red-skinned people, people with red have very light skins, and they get skin cancer very easily because they don't tan.
Yeah.
So that really means, as I say, that Neanderthal was probably nocturnal, because if they'd been living with white, red hair and pale white skin, they'd have had so much skin cancer they probably wouldn't have survived. So that's another reason for them being moon worshippers.
Yeah, that's
Because they were nocturnal. And indeed, witches, as we know, operate at night, not during the day. And whatever, and worshipping the moon, Now, what's gone wrong here? Oh, I know. God, I'm such an idiot. Right, yeah.
Yeah, the second microphone there. Did you have that on before?
Yeah, I had it here though. I thought I don't really have a position. Well, that's
That's a good idea.
too much rusty. Well, you got two channels that you can record at once, so it just gives.
Maybe we can find somewhere to put those.
Oh, I'm sticking this one.
Okay.
Cheers. Thanks.
No, as I say, if I send you copies of some of the letters I've written, that won't be difficult.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And then you can possibly use some of that information if you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll put an essay together, which I'll put on. I'll post on the website.
All right. Yeah.
But I'll send it to you. Let you have a look at it first before I post it up.
Yeah. Okay.
You can check it over. I wouldn't want to put anything out that you weren't happy with.
How did you get the record company to do your records? Did you pay them or?
I put it. We did it ourselves.
You did that yourselves?
It cost a lot of money. Yeah.
But it's got a recording company name on the.
Yeah, it's our company. We set
that
it
is
up.
you.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, we set it up ourselves.
Yeah, it must be quite expensive, I guess.
Yeah, it was sort of like I mean, it's a bit like the book publishing trade, I guess. I mean, I would doubt a record company would be interested in because of because the type of music and the audience is not big enough to sustain that. And I realised that to produce it would be quite an achievement, really, because of Colin's involvement and Julian's involvement. And I thought it's just a once in a lifetime thing, really. Maybe it could be. Well, hopefully it'll be the start of something. But I thought to myself, well, I'd rather spend my money on doing that and getting out something that I'm really proud of and achieve something, than to say spending it on a new kitchen or something like that.
But what about downloading from the internet? That's the thing with music now. Can you do that? Can't you?
Some people do that, but these MP3 files, which people download and listen to on their Walkmans and things, but the quality of those files is not good.
No, I heard that. Yeah.
No, I mean it's just like fast food. It's a bit like a fast food for the music industry, really. And people, what are you doing? Trying to stop that rattling?
But if you made money out of it, you wouldn't care about the quality, would you?
I suppose not. No.
Oh, it's actually working.
Yeah.
Well done.
But yeah, I mean, hopefully, I think it will break even. I'm sure it will. I mean, we've got a long way to go yet, but we can't afford to spend any money on advertising. So
where do you how do you market it then?
Well,
Where is
market it on the website, and people can buy it via the website, and people are doing slowly.
I see that Colin's actually got, which I thought was quite a good idea. He's got some, I think it's Morris Bassett. He's someone that publishes a lot of. He does a lot of internet work, and he publishes some of Colin's, does the e-books, the internet books. But he's got some lectures, interviews that people have done with Colin, similar to what we're doing now, and they put them in MP3 format, and you can download them. But the good thing about it is he only charges a couple of dollars to do it, so £1.50 or something. So it's very easy to you don't think twice about doing it. I got a load the other day, and there's about 4 or 5 of them on there for going through various stages from the early 80s.
I mean, MP3 files are great for the spoken word and stuff like that, but for listening to music, the quality is not as good as on a proper disc or something.
Well, the people are complaining now about the quality of discs, aren't they? They're saying that the actual quality of discs isn't as good as it could be. People like vinyl. That's why a lot of people are still listening to vinyl, because the actual tones are richer.
I still buy vinyl. I love vinyl. I think there's.
But they're reckoning some of the music shops will have to shut, aren't they? Because there won't be the turnover now.
Maybe, It's just this throwaway society. People will download a song and then when they're fed up with it, they'll just wipe it off.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because they said when there's always this kind of idea, because they said when they had football on telly, people would stop going to matches, which is quite the opposite happened. And the same with films. They said if you have films on television, all these films, people stop going to the cinema, which they did for a while. But now they get to cinema in greater
That's right.
numbers.
And books, they said books would go to, but in fact, books seem to be as popular as ever. People prefer.
I think people like the packaging. I mean, if I buy a product, I buy it because I like the whole thing. It's like if you've got a book, you can put it on your shelf, you can pick it up. And reading books on the internet's pretty dull, really. I mean.
But do you, when you buy one on the internet, do you download it, or how does it work?
Yeah, you download it as a file, and then you can print it out.
I've got a thing in the car, actually, a little thing that's about that has a screen about that big, and you've got your diary and everything on it. But you can also put books on it. And you can put any number of books, really, for thousands on, and just.
But it is very cheap, isn't it? I mean, the Paranormal, I think, costs $5.60 on the internet, which is bugger all, isn't it?
For £3.50 or so £3.
But I'd like
and
to
the incredible thing is they give me $1.50 what's the word, commission,
for each book.
blah blah. Whereas you'd be lucky to get that on a proper hardback. You know what I mean? Costing 20 or 30 quid.
I suppose they've got no overheads, really, have they?
Well, I suppose that's it. Yeah, I suppose that's it.
Once it's on there, I guess.
Yeah. No,
Is it not boiling?
It doesn't want to boil. I don't know why. I don't use it much, but
not to worry.
it'll be hot enough. Anyway, what do you do otherwise? What's your normal job?
I'm a graphic designer. I work from home. I used to work for the NHS. That's how I found your asthmatic child book. But I'm a graphic designer now, and I still design health materials. I work from home. I work on my own, my own sort of business, doing that. I don't enjoy it really, but it's fairly lucrative. One of the problems I have working from home is because I've got all these other projects on the go. Like I like writing and I like doing my music and things. Is that when you're at home surrounded by all the things you like, there's a tendency to try and split your time, and you have to be quite disciplined really. And some days I just think, I really need to be writing my own stuff today, but I've got to design an annual report for an NHS trust, and that does my head in a bit. But
I mean, one of the reasons I gave up normal work, only one of the reasons, was to have all my time for myself, to do what I wanted. But of course the price you pay is being down and out a lot of the time.
Well, mine's sort of a halfway house because I'm not because I obviously when I was employed I couldn't do the things I wanted. Like now I can manage my work so that I can have days where I do what I want. So it's a happy medium, really.
Yeah.
But it would be great if I didn't have to do it. But you know, I can't ever see that day arriving.
And what do you do, Simon?
I'm a nurse in a forensic hospital. I work in, well, I manage a forensic ward in a secure unit.
Oh. Do you like it, or?
Well, I like it. I like it because I quite like a job that it gives you time to do other things. It is very it fits around doing stuff like this. You know, I can always get time off, and and I sort of alternate between doing 9 to 5s and then shifts and bits and pieces. So so it's good. I mean, that's why I chose it. I sort of.
Looking back, would you do differently?
Not really. I'm trying to finish an MSc at the moment, which is something that I will regret if I don't. So I've
How long have you got left on that?
well, I've just actually the day before yesterday we had a big a big phone conversation with her, and she said that she said she's very happy with her work so far. What she wants to do is she said she would go for mitigating. So because of all this business with Sally's mum and Mike and everything, she said she was quite happy to go to give me another year kind of thing.
Alright.
But they keep giving me more time. The more time you get, but I need to sit down and do it. So it's a straight sort of research project. It's
What are you researching?
I'm researching educational participation in the forensic unit. I get that's exciting. I could have bloody chosen theirs. I don't know why on earth I chose that. I just I could have. I must have been mad. I think I was a bit naive to. I thought I'd try and do something. It was. I was trying to do something that was sort of academic, but I could have done something like left-handedness in psychiatric patients.
Yeah, that would make good for research.
Which would have been a lot more easy to do. A lot more straightforward. I suppose.
Well, that's possibly too cold. It wouldn't boil. Now it's boiling. I don't know why it refused to work at first. Got it?
Yeah.
Careful. There's sugar there. Hang on. I've only got 1 spoon. There's only 1 tap works.
Alright.
The other 2 taps got blocked.
Yeah.
And I never bothered to get them sorted.
Yeah.
As long as you've got 1.
Oh, it's boiling now, yeah.
Yeah, now it's boiling.
Yeah, you need boiling water for tea, really. That's okay.
Anyway, the next one will be hot. Right.
Yes, it's a beautiful part of the world down here. It's the first time I've been this way, really.
Yeah. You'll have to share the spoon, I'm afraid, if you want sugar.
No, I haven't done sugar. That's okay.
Right. I liked it because it wasn't in London, London's too busy now, too noisy.
Yeah.
That's why I basically liked it as a hideaway. But on the other hand, I don't, the few friends I've got who are still alive are all in London and whatever. So I don't really see people, That's a drawback. Because most of the time I was back and forth, originally. That was okay.
What part of London did you live in?
Hampstead.
Hampstead, right.
Northwest 3. Yeah.
I live in Ealing.
But it's, driving. I learned to drive in the sort of, I sort to drive in the mid 80s.
No, I'm not having a tea.
And even in those days, I used to go. For the last, since 1988, me and Simon have been visiting prehistoric monuments all over Britain. And driving about was never a problem, but driving around this day and age, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Took me 5.5 hours to get here from Lincoln.
Yeah.
Bloody, it's like average speed of about 45 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Just so many cars.
Well, I used to go first thing in the morning, like 6 o'clock. At 6 a.m. I'd leave here, and that was then easy, you know, then whatever. That was quick, and coming back, I'd come back very late. But as you say, in the rush hour, it's bad. It's bad. Yeah.
That wore me out yesterday. I thought, God. And I turned off into Swansea, and the bloody roadworks there. I was thinking, I'm never gonna arrive. I know, I'm simply been driving.
Yeah.
As soon as you get onto the Gower, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the sun was out. I was thinking, oh, well, it's worth it. You know, when you get there and you sort of think, what a wonderful place.
You have to go to that sort of built-up area to go to the Gower, don't you? Only sort of Swansea kind of.
Yeah.
And the houses
Capped
end,
off.
and then suddenly you're into this beautiful landscape. And it was.
Yeah.
We camped at a place called Oxwich.
Yeah.
And last night, and it was beautiful down there, right near the beach, and
Yeah.
quite stunning.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've certainly returned to this neck of the woods. It's great.
Is there any particular place you would recommend going?
Well, I have driven around, but I've no memory of what's where, so to speak. You know, when I first came, I did a bit of driving around, but well, follow the coastline is probably the best way, and then you can head into the heart of the mountains.
Yeah.
You know, after that, but try the coastline.
There's quite a few standing stones I noticed, and burial mounds and things. So and chambers. So we could check those out later on, maybe. We'll walk around, yeah. So do you hear from Colin a lot then? Does he write a lot, or?
Well, we have periods when we correspond heavily, but you know, because he's got a new book coming out, not this autobiography, but you know, the new book coming out.
The New Atlantis one, isn't it?
Atlantis and the Old Ones, I think it's called.
That's right, yeah.
Atlantis and the Old
So
Ones,
we've been corresponding about that a bit. Apparently what he's done is he's used a lot of the material that the guy cut out of that Rand cut out of the other one. But I haven't seen a copy of it yet, so I don't know.
Sent us some chapters, didn't he?
I've got it. I've read it on. He sent it to me on.
Oh, you got it.
In email.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a quick look.
What's the basic thesis? What's he saying? That there was an ancient civilization? Is that what he's saying?
Can't remember now.
It was a while ago when he sent it, wasn't it?
It was. And I've read. I think I've read his other ones since then. I can't remember which.
I thought he'd given up on it actually, because he told me a couple of years ago he was going to do it. You know.
Yeah.
And I never heard any more.
I think it revisits quite a few of the things that you put in first. He doesn't do so much of the latitude and longitude stuff that was in the Atlantis blueprint stuff. But it's mostly about sort of the cultures being more ancient, or civilized culture being more ancient than we think at the present day, which I suppose is a fairly sure bet that people will find that. I think that's a bit more and more, isn't it? When you look at even academics now are saying that you have to keep pushing back.
There was a program, maybe it was Horizon, I don't know, but about the Pleiades legend, and they've got something like a pottery thing showing the Pleiades. Anyway, they showed that it must be very ancient because the Greeks and Romans hadn't got to that point in Europe to tell them this stuff, so they must have had it independently. Because I wrote to the producer and said, well, you know, the stuff is probably 50,000 or 75,000 years old, not 5,000, as your program claimed. But whether they've taken in, I mean, I got a letter of acknowledgement from the director, but that was all. I asked him to send the material I sent, which was from Cities of Dreams, you know, the chapter of the Dancing Maidens. I sent him a copy of that chapter. I said, could you send that chapter to all the people involved in the program? But whether he did, I don't know. Because there's no question the Pleiades legend obviously is 50 or 75,000 years old. It's got to be. Because it came from some central source once. And now the Australian Aborigines have got it, the Greeks have got it, the South American Indians have got it, you know. They've all got it, so they must have got it from somewhere central. Once.
So you don't, I mean, in your books you don't obviously believe in sort of the diffusionist ideas of cultures and things coming out of Africa, you know, all the races coming out of an African source.
No, I don't think it's true. I think Cro-Magnon went into Africa. that he came from the Middle East, not the Middle East, the Far East somewhere. Probably, perhaps even north, well up north. It must have evolved on the open plains because he's tall. Must have had reduced sunlight because he had white skin and needed, because it's one of the few sources of vitamin D is sunlight, you know.
Yeah.
So you need some sunlight. And was probably in an area not good at preserving fossils. Now that's not a fairy story. There is a part of North India, for instance, where there are virtually no fossils of any kind because the terrain is wrong. So it's quite possible that Cro-Magnon built in an area where the fossils aren't found because they don't exist, or somewhere like Siberia, which is frozen solid now. So you can't excavate, you can't look for fossils because there's a permafrost. You know, you can't dig. So I think that's where Cro-Magnon evolved. You know, the far north, or mid-north, as it were, somewhere in Asia, or perhaps North Russia, maybe. You know, whatever. And then came down and through the Middle East into Europe, but also into Africa. You know, the Cro-Magnon didn't come out of Africa; he went into Africa, and that's something I've said in my letters to scientists. Have you never thought the Cro-Magnon might have gone into Africa? You know, okay, there are certainly Cro-Magnonoid fossils in Africa, dating about 60,000 years, no, not older. So he could have gone in there at that point.
Yes.
And indeed, and the other thing they never mention is that the most extreme Neanderthal skull ever found is south of the Sahara in Africa, and they call it, you mustn't say it now, because you call it Rhodesian man. You mustn't say that now, it's called Rhodesian man. And I always put in brackets, not Mugabe, boom. Anyway, the most extreme Neanderthal skull ever found is in Africa, south of the Sahara, and it's only 40,000 years old. So anybody who says that Cro-Magnon evolved in Africa has to come to terms with the fact that clearly Neanderthal was occupying it simultaneously, up to 40,000 years ago, and a very Neanderthal form of Neanderthal. Now they don't face that one. Again, I want students to go to their lectures and say, look, we do have a skull from Rhodesia, a Neanderthal skull, only 40,000 years old, very extremely Neanderthal. How does that equate with Cro-Magnon evolving in Africa? You know, how did they get on, and you know, which was in which part then? How did they, you know, what did they do together or not? Anyways, I think as the Cro-Magnon went into Africa, and as in other parts, interbred with Neanderthal there. You know.
Yeah, it's. Do you know the work of Barry Fell? Did you know Barry Fell?
The name rings a faint bell, but nothing particular. No.
No, he wrote some books on American BC.
Yeah.
One of his books was called American BC. I've not read it yet. Through the website, somebody I wrote an essay about Lethbridge and the I forgot what the name of the stone is now. Westford Knight,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
which was a carved rock in Northern America,
Yeah.
and somebody had contacted Lethbridge, and Lethbridge had interpreted it not by going there, but by looking at photographs and drawings sent to him by this chap. And somebody who lived quite near this carved rock wrote to me and said, like, "Oh, I didn't know about this," and went to investigate it and everything like that. And she recommended a book by Barry Fell, who talks about about the prehistoric America. And I've not read it yet. I mean, I was looking at it earlier before I set off, and it's quite amazing that the amount of prehistory that exists in America that has just not been documented.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost as if maybe it's this sort of Christian fundamentalism, I don't know, but it has almost brushed it under the carpet.
Yeah.
There's this diffusionist theory, isn't it, which people just stick to through thick and thin. They say, no, white men only, it's because it's like there's lots of stuff in South America as well. They say white men only came into sort of North America across the land bridge and at this date, and anything before that must be true. It's a bit like when they didn't believe in meteorites, so they didn't bother going and looking at them. If somebody said there's a meteorite, they didn't bother because they say, well, they're not true, so I can't.
Yeah.
So it appears that there's a whole continent there that's prehistory has not been documented.
Oh, absolutely not. No, one of the oldest zodiacs ever found, as you may remember, Mrs. of Dreams, was in North America. You know, one of the oldest stone zodiacs. They found it in a river. Well, long predating the arrival of. I'll give you a hot cup this time.
Okay.
Long predating the arrival of the white men, you know.
Yeah.
So they were making stone zodiacs, and whatever else they were doing, you know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get really, as you say, ever discussed properly at all. Just
Do you have any thoughts about about what's happening in Iraq at the moment, about Bush and his creed and their motives?
well, it's always for me Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon.
Yeah.
You know, okay, there are things like economic factors. Clearly, you know, Bush wanted to control the oil.
Yeah.
Sure, that's all true, but basically, you know,
Like oil and water, really.
anti-political correctness and political correctness are Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal again, you know.
Yeah.
And it's always the underneath the underneath driving force to all the conflicts, in my opinion. Whatever other ones there are on top, like territory or whatever, and possessions. But right, it's now boiling.
Yeah.
So we can have
There
a
you
hot one.
Yeah, that's great. Have another biscuit.
Right. Now I've got to use the tap in the bathroom. Everything else.
Thanks.
You still read a lot, or what?
No, I hardly do anything these days. I mean, you know, in the winter especially, I get through there by going walking, collecting bits of wood
Yeah.
for the fire. You know, I don't do anything constructive anymore.
Right.
So you know. I mean, I look through things in the bookshop, you know, but that's about it, really. Right.
Did you used to have a big library when you were back in London, or?
Well, I had more than that lot,
Mm.
but not a lot more.
No. Not like Colin then, he's got something like 35,000 books in his.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
I think Joy counted them about 10 years ago, and 10 years ago they had about 32 or
Yeah,
33,000.
Yeah. Well, I've never had the premises to have that sort of thing. You know, I've
No.
never had a place of my own, really.
No. Colin's got like chalets in the garden that are just full of books.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Strange that tapping you did on the cup, because my dad always used to do that. He used to go, I wondered where it came from, because my dad used to play in a jazz band. Used to be a drummer in a jazz band, and when the chap used to come and pick him up on a Saturday night to collect his drums, he used to knock on the door. He used to go dunk 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 dunk. It's sort of like a familiar, friendly rap that. I wonder where that originated, because now into people's sort of, not nowadays, but a lot of people used to do it in years past.
Actually, I think I might have been, in other circumstances, a musician, whatever.
Yeah.
I developed the same sort of thing as I did with writing.
Yeah.
I had piano lessons for about 3 months, and she couldn't believe it. That I would play the thing through once, then I didn't need to look at the music again. I knew it by heart once I'd gone through it, and she didn't believe me. And she, how come you can play this and you're not looking at the music? You know. So I think I probably could have been a musician.
Yeah.
But it never figured. You know, it never came into the agenda.
Sounds like you've got a faculty for, you know, sort of capturing things instantly.
Yeah. But Colin mentions a boy of 5.
Thank you.
And this is a fact because his
Yes.
father's a scientist. The boy's father was a scientist.
Yeah.
They were out walking, the scientist and his son,
Yeah.
who was 5 years old,
Yeah.
and the boy says, "What time is it?" So his dad says, "Oh, it's 4:30." So after a few minutes, the kid says, "So now I'm, 2,000,000,000,758,000 seconds old."
Yeah.
And his father said, "Oh, really?" Anyway, so he wrote the figure down, went home, checked it on the computer. And he said to his son, "Well, it's amazing." He said, "But you're 70,000 seconds out." And the boy said, "No, you've forgotten the leap year."
Yeah. Oh wow.
And so the father did it again, taking account of leap year. And he said, "You're right. That's how many seconds old you were." And the kid did it in his head
Yes.
at 5 years old.
There's a guy in Australia that I can't remember his name at the moment. But he's doing experiments on freezing parts of people's brains.
Yeah.
Because his theory is, well, I suppose it's his and others, is that sort of the savant-like abilities are due to a conscious process. It's not conscious process, but a process of consciousness.
Yeah.
To be conscious, you have to cut out some of these abilities. So it's the savants are able to perceive things in kind of patterns far more easily. So what he's done is he's got this thing which can give bursts of electromagnetism in the brain and freeze parts of it. And what he does is he freezes parts of the conscious processes so that it stops them working, paralyzes it. And he's successful. He's found that people become far better at mathematics, far better at things that those sort of processes that the savants have, at recognizing patterns. When they've had this sort of free, they have sort of like a helmet on that sort of freezes the parts. So it's very interesting.
I'm sure, in fact, that the powers of the brain are nothing like fully exploited, even in the very clever people. And this is something I would want to mention, although it's not connected directly with my theories, is that nature gives the species the future long before anything comes along that's going to be the future. In other words, Darwinism is wrong. I mean, I'm not anti-Darwin. There is natural selection. But what Darwin takes no account of is the fact that abilities exist before they're used. Now, how do they come into being before they're used? And our mental abilities are one example. I mean, why have we got this incredible potential when we've got enough to survive now? And it's not as if, only the cleverer ones are surviving. It's nothing like that.
No.
I mean, this cleverness is far in excess of any cleverness we need to survive. Far in excess.
Yeah.
And things like music, they have no survival value that one can identify of any kind. You can't say that's needed for survival. You can't. But the ability is there. What is it for? Where does it come from? So I think, that the future, as it were, already exists in us, just as it exists in dogs and so on. Their future already exists in them. Did you read about that dog the last couple of days? There's a dog in Germany.
Oh, it did, yeah.
That recognised 200 words, names of toys and things.
Yeah, quite amazing.
Well, the dog doesn't need that ability. It's got it.
They reckon it's got the vocabulary of a 3-year-old child, didn't they?
So that ability, if necessary, the dog could use. But it's got it before survival has acted on it, so to speak. It pre-exists.
It's interesting because a friend of mine is married to a savant, and she's genius, really. She's a mathematical genius.
Mm.
And they had their caravan stolen. And about 2 weeks later, they were driving down a road, and she suddenly turned off into a lane and drove down the lane and arrived at a house where their caravan was parked. And he said, "Why did you do that?" And she said, I saw the caravan being towed down here. She'd actually seen it. So the actual events that had happened 2 weeks before, she had actually perceived them out of time. She'd actually followed the caravan, even though it was 2 weeks later. Isn't that strange?
Sorry, the caravan hadn't yet been stolen.
Yeah, the caravan was stolen, and 2 weeks, and they'd reported it missing.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, they were driving along a road.
Yeah.
When she just obviously something clicked, and she saw the caravan being towed down the road, but it wasn't.
Oh, I saw. She saw.
Saw it in her mind.
Retrocognition.
Yeah.
Retrocognition.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fine. Yeah.
Which is quite outstanding.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there was the caravan, and,
Yeah.
and my friend said to her, "How did you know it was here?" And she goes, "Well, I saw it, you know."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And there it was, position.
You know, I spend a lot of time in the casino, partly because they give free tea and coffee, and you can read the newspapers, and also chat to people who are like yourself, nothing else to do. You know. But what is amazing, I've noticed, and a lot of people agree with me on this, is that somebody will mention a number for some reason, and the next number is that one.
Yeah.
It's precognition. But there's no, as it were, logical context in terms, like a guy will say, what will he say? Let me think of an example. Oh, he says, "Oh, my son's 10 years old tomorrow." The next number is 10. Do you follow? What he says has got nothing to do with, he's not trying to guess numbers, he's chatting just to a friend, and the number comes up. I mentioned one example in, I think it's in the Paranormal. I went into a casino and went to the table, and a woman who I didn't know looked at me and said, "I've been betting the number 8 all evening and it bloody hasn't come up, and I'm finished," and she walked away. And the next 3 numbers were 888, triple spun, which is fucking rare, you know.
Yeah.
And she said it, she called it in, so to speak. And it's amazing how often that happens. And as I say, other people who are in the casino say, "Yes, I have noticed that," you know, that, like, somebody will say, you know, "Oh, 30 wasn't very hot yesterday." Next number's 30. You know, it's something has triggered the precognition, and they put it into a different context. They put it into normal conversation. They're not trying to spot the next number, you know, they're just chatting, but it creeps in.
Yeah.
So retrocognition and precognition, you know, I think it happens all the time. You know.
Yes.
But
Well, that bit in the Paranormal, you said there's the same number. Is it the same number or the same colours come up a certain amount of times, but it's never been beyond that?
well, there is a ceiling. I mean, you'll never, in my opinion, you'll never see the same number 58 times. You'll never see it. But where the cut-off point is, nobody can quite say.
Yeah.
I mean, in my life, and I've been a lot in casinos all my life, I've seen a few times a 4-time repeat, but a couple of months back, for the first time in my life, I saw a 5-timer, the same number 5 times. The odds are very heavy against that. You know, it's 36 times 36 times 36 times 36, you know, it's very big. But the incredible thing was that the people playing at the table took no notice of it. Everybody in the casino, because you know, it's up on the screen as well, apart from at the table, and everybody was suddenly transfixed by it was 7, by number 7. It went 7, 7, 7. Now triple spin is already rare, so people start thinking, "Oh, that's interesting." 7, a 4th 7, and then a 5th 7. Now, I've only ever seen that once, and you know, nobody on the table bet it. Not one person said, "Shit, it's a run, I better go on it." Not one person was betting it on the table. Incredible.
It is, isn't it? And I think you talk in that passage about whether something becomes impossible. There's a point, as you were just mentioning, wasn't there? That would it be impossible, you know, for it to appear 10 times in a row? Then I suppose the answer would be yes. But in theory,
Well, very, very probably.
yeah.
In theory, there's no limit. In theory,
No.
but in practice, there's a sort of grey area within which beyond which it never does go.
I suppose it's a bit like when I think you use the one about say running 100 meters, for example, and somebody can run it in 9.6, and then somebody does it in 9, and gradually the time comes down.
Yeah.
But every time it comes down, it becomes a very smaller amount.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So I suppose there comes a point where a human being couldn't run any faster.
No, I would think so. I would think it'll never do 100 meters in 1 second. Not ever. I think not ever, ever, ever. But you know, I don't think one should get hung up the way scientists do about where is the cut-off point. There isn't. It's a wobbly line near the cut-off point.
Yes.
It's not scientific in the sense you can say there it is.
Yeah.
And that's final, and that's definite. It's not like that. You know, it's just that it just decreases.
So do you think, you know, you talk a bit about chance in there. Do you think, like, sort of meaningful coincidence it's a pre-planned thing? You talk about, you know, you're talking about the writer of your script. Do you think that? So
Well,
therefore, it's not chance, is it really? Because
I think there is. I think the future does exist already, or bits of it at least already exist before they're used, so to speak. Whether you can talk about fourth dimension or fifth dimension or whatever, I don't know. But there is some way, and also the past continues to exist. Like when a psychic finds a body that nobody living knows where it's buried.
Yes,
You know, it's been a
proof in
murder,
the pudding sort of thing.
and the murderer himself or herself is dead.
Mm.
And so nobody knows where the body is, and the psychic says, "Oh, it's buried on that mountainside there," and there it is.
Mm.
So the past continues to exist even when the people
Yeah.
who had it in their heads have gone. So there is some kind of future and past coexisting with us now. How far ahead and back it goes, I don't know. Again, the cut-off point is vague. But I think Nostradamus probably did get some things right about the very distant future from him. You know, that
Yeah.
was very unusual, him going that far ahead.
Yes.
But I think there is a limit. I wouldn't ever think you could see anything 2 million years ahead. I wouldn't think, you know.
No.
And quite how.
I suppose the further into the future, and maybe into the past, I suppose it becomes just out of reach almost like your runner running 100
Yeah,
meters
exactly.
in a second.
It's
it just becomes less
yeah.
probable and
Yeah,
less
yeah,
reachable,
yeah.
achievable. I guess it's the same sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I know Lethbridge believed that, didn't he? Because he believed that sequence existed in the other dimensions,
Yeah.
but time didn't play any relevance.
Yeah.
But order did. And I believe that there is order because it's a bit like a flowing stream. You know, it needs order. All
Yeah.
natural things need order, don't
Yeah,
they?
yeah,
They
yeah.
can't. They can't flow backwards.
It's not a jumble. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
You couldn't watch it in reverse, like you were reversing a videotape. But you can actually watch it at a point,
Yeah.
and it will move forward in sequence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I believe that. 'Cause I think on one of the tracks on a Giant. I think it's the third track, Fixed Universal Scale. I talk about an event I experienced at Barbara One Stone Circle when I was surrounded by fog and lost my way, and then for a second, I sort of went into a panic, and the fog had gone, and it was a completely different landscape.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And that is the weirdest thing that ever happened to me, really. And I really did experience the world completely out of time.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I was seeing something that was past. It was not future.
Yeah.
And it only lasted. I don't know. It was a timeless moment, actually.
Yeah.
A completely timeless moment. I can't tell you how long it lasted.
Yeah.
But I suddenly found myself back in the real world. You know, after I panicked.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So you know, proof of the pudding, I guess. It's
Yeah.
there. And Lethbridge did that with his ghoul, didn't he? That he felt the ghoul on Ladram Beach, and it wasn't the presence of somebody who had committed suicide. It was the presence of somebody who eventually did commit suicide. I think it was about a few months in advance, wasn't it? And then he heard about the suicide afterwards.
Yeah.
So he'd experienced something that hadn't actually quite happened.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing, that. Quite amazing.
But it's very hard to, you know, get, as it were, sensible people to listen to any of this, and people who think they're sensible. The businessman who kicked me out of my flat in London, the self-made millionaire, we were sitting in the lounge one day, and he was saying, "Oh, telepathy is rubbish." And I said, "Is it?" And there was a pack of cards on the table, and I picked up the pack, put it, you know, under the table, and I said, "Right, David, what is this card I'm holding?" And he said, "Queen of Spades." Queen of Spades. And I said, okay, David, there you are. And he said, oh, very interesting. Odds are 51 to 1. I said, oh, come off it, David. Odds are billions to 1. I said I would do it, and I did it.
Yeah.
I said I'm going to do this, David.
Yeah.
And I did it.
Yeah.
There's no odds involved.
No.
It's impossible
Yeah.
to get that right.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah, and then somebody like that would say to you, oh, do it again. And
I know
that
that, but you can't do it again. You can't
That's
do
exactly right.
It's funny how
Yeah.
sort of those sort of events often do occur. There's a certain sort of beginner's luck involved. You know. You,
Oh yes, absolutely.
And then it just dies
It's the
off.
spontaneity, I think.
Well, beginner's luck is a reality. Absolutely. An example of it recently is a guy I know around here, and he's never been in the casino before. And he came in as a guest. He never played roulette before. And he said, oh, I'm going to have a go. I said, all right. And he put out half a dozen numbers. Won. And won again. He won 25 quid in a few spins.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, John, that's it. Stop now, And as it happened, he'd done things like his daughter's birthday or her age or something, blah, 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 whatever. Those are the numbers he picked. And he won. And he'd never played roulette in his life before.
No.
And it's so easy to lose at roulette. There's no problem about losing at roulette.
No.
You watch it all the time.
Yeah.
You see a table covered with stacks of bloody chips everywhere, and the number that's blank comes in. It's so easy to lose. But he had beginner's luck. It's not. I don't think it's a myth. I think it's a fact.
I think it's a fact. I think it's the fact that it's the spontaneity of it. There's a freshness.
And the fact that you don't know anything about the situation.
Yeah.
See, after that, you start saying to people, "Well, how many numbers are there on the wheel?" And blah blah blah. And you start to think about it. And once you think about it, it's finished.
Yes. When me and a friend decided to go busking once, we went down to the on a Sunday afternoon to the tunnel that goes between the tube station and the museums in London. That Kensington subway. And there was nobody there. We sat there and we bussed. We made about 60 quid within about an hour and a half. We couldn't believe it. We thought, this is incredible. So we went and got drunk and said to our mate, come down, next weekend we'll do the same thing. It's fantastic. Next weekend, the whole place was full up with buskers. And they basically told us to clear off. But they also denied that we were there last week.
Really?
Yeah. It was really sort of, we couldn't stand anywhere. We stand anywhere. We get somebody saying, look, this is we did. Because then you looked on the walls, and each wall had a name in a little magic marker.
It's a bit the same with hitchhiking, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
another example.
Yeah.
It's a great example. You start off and you'll be picked up, and you do it on a regular basis, and decide you want to run your life by hitchhiking around. You not do it.
That's right.
You'd not do it at all. It'd be impossible.
It's a bit like going places. It's like you go to a place like that campsite. You say, well, we just go there and you find a lovely campsite. You both arrive there within a few minutes of each other. Stuff like that. You try and do it again. One of us will get lost, and the place will be full up. And it's
One of the things we were talking about on the way down, which is quite interesting, is that when we decided to go down, I just looked at the map and there was loads of campsites. And I just picked one at random. I thought, oh, looks a good one. It's near the beach. It looks quite a nice campsite. Simon coincidentally had also seen the same campsite, so we both agreed on that one. So off we go. And it's funny when you set off, having never been here before. I had a picture in my mind. Not a photograph, but actually a movie playing in my mind of me arriving at the campsite, going to the reception, booking in. I could even see myself putting my tent up and standing waiting for him. I could picture the campsite, the gate, everything. It was almost as if I'd been there before. When I get there, it doesn't look anything like that. But that's strange, isn't it? That I've got this movie going on.
Yeah.
Where has that come from? That's really strange.
You see, the unconscious mind is the Delphic Oracle and all the other things, and it's listening to you.
Yeah.
Listening to the other you, as it were.
Yeah.
Its other self, and it will often grant wishes.
Yeah.
Or if it's in a bad mood, deny wishes for something to do, as it were, almost.
Yeah.
And it's he wants a picture of a campsite. All right, it's incredible because that's where I think the wishing well comes from. The idea of the wishing well, and if you can ask your cerebellum properly, of course, it will cure you of a fatal illness. I mean, the Lourdes miracles are not faked. There are authentic cases on record of people who had terminal illnesses that were incurable, and 2 days later the illness has gone after going to Lourdes, and or sometimes the same night it's gone. Well, it's it's the wishing well, the Delphic Oracle saying, okay, all right, I'll do it this time. You know, boom, there you are.
Yeah.
See, I think if we could really harness the powers of the cerebellum, we wouldn't have any illnesses. We wouldn't. Whether we would even get old, I don't know. I think it could even probably stop aging. And that potential is there. And it comes through occasionally, say things like Lourdes and whatever. But how does it get to be there in the first place? It's just, you know, it doesn't make you start believing in God or anything, but you start saying there's a bloody scenario which we haven't really got a glimpse of yet.
Yes.
The whole process is somehow much more far-reaching and magical and unpredictable and amazing than anything we've imagined so far. You know.
Yeah. My friend Malcolm Jensen, was the one who was married to the savant, was has a theory about autism and Buddhism, and he likes the state of autism to one of the sort of ritual states or meditational states of the Buddhist, and he believes that people should view autism not as an illness or a medical complaint or whatever, but he actually sees the autist as a new breed of person that operate in a completely different sphere or dimension or vibrational rate than the rest of us. That's how savants are able to do massive calculations using another part of the brain, and that really he sees this as the birth, but he sees it not as an evolutionary step, but as a devolutionary step, almost, you know, contradicting the sort of Darwin's idea of evolution. In fact, that the ancients may well have had autistic abilities, i.e. an ability to achieve things using unconventional methods, or what we would class as unconventional methods. But I suppose a good example of that, I always remember that when the Rubik's Cube came out, and there was always kids who could just take it at any stage and just do it. And when you look at the mathematical equation, you're thinking, well, they couldn't possibly have learned that, because it's about, I think I bought the book, I think it was about 70 or 80 pages of taking the cube from any given state and finishing it. Yeah, they hadn't learned that.
I know, I agree,
And they were using this part of the mind that autists use all the time, or autistic savants use all the time.
It's when my daughter was about 1 year old, we were at a party and it was outside, and she picked up someone's mobile phone, a friend's mobile phone, and she was pressing the buttons, and he, you know, as you don't mind, because they can't really do much.
Somebody else's phone.
But the person whose phone it was and didn't mind either. And then when he tried to use the phone, he found it's been locked. And first of all, he thought it was something that was quite easy to sort out. But eventually, he had to send it back to the company because it wasn't working. And the company said to get this phone in this state, you'd have to press the phone. You'd have to make about 25 sequential presses of the keys in the exact order. You know, like you'd have to say, go to this menu. Choose to do this, choose to do that. You'd have to do that, and they said they could not believe that a baby had done it
by accident.
Done it by accident.
That's strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quite amazing.
There's something else I was going to pick up on what you just said, and it's gone out of my head again. It's hard to retain things. I know what it is. I know what it is. This is recently, the last 5 or 10 years, and it's as if it's a compensation for the way I live and things I don't do. I now have dreams which last all night, the same dream. And I can wake up half a dozen times, have to go to the loo or whatever, and when I go back to sleep, the dream resumes where it left off.
Right.
And it's not the normal dream, you know, which is vague or jumping about. It's a storyline. And sometimes the dream is presented as a film. I go to the cinema and I'm going to see a film, and the film runs and the credits and then the film. And I watch the film.
Is it the same dream every night?
Oh no.
It's a continuation.
On this particular night, it's a film, and I'm watching it, and I watch the film right through. And so if I wake up or look, then I go back, the film's on again, where it left off. It could be a concert, and sometimes I hear the most amazing music. I can't do anything with it because I don't have any way of writing music down. Occasionally I do get a tune, because there's a poem attached to it, and I remember the words, and I can get the tune. If I write, as long as I write the words down as soon as I wake up, I've got the tune as well. So I've got a few tunes, But the concert stuff I can't do anything with. It's music, but it's not known music, it's created music, right? Okay, so I might go to a concert that night. Another time I'm reading a novel or something, and I read it from cover to cover. And, so anyway, so it's all kinds of different scenarios. But the amazing thing is that it's always in colour, it's always incredibly clear, it's always incredibly involved, and it's continuous. And what's the other thing I was going to say about it? Some other thing I was going to say. Maybe I'll think of it in a minute. Anyway, this has been going on for several years now. And when I was interviewed for the Man Foundation thing by this author John Lash, there's one of his books by the way, John Lash, Christopher Zodiac. He's also a writer. And I don't know why, I mentioned this business of dreaming. And he sort of sat there and stared at me. And I said, no, I'm not kidding, I'm not making it. He said, I know you're not. He said, because the same thing happens to me. And he said, I've never mentioned it to anybody because they'll say I'm mad or a liar or something. He said, there's no point in discussing this with anybody. He said, but that's exactly what I have. Continuous dreams, which if I wake up and it starts up again. And I'd never heard of this. I mean, I'm a psychologist and I've read books on all this. I've never heard this thing mentioned. So he and I have this, and it's incredible that we both happen to meet up.
Yes.
And it happened to come up in conversation. So he has this too. But
so when you wake, are you obviously you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'll continue this in a minute when I've been to the toilet?
No, I don't even think about that. I just go to the toilet and go back to sleep. I don't try to make it happen.
No.
I don't manipulate it in any way.
It just sort of goes on.
Yeah, it just happens.
Wow.
And it's amazing. Now, there is you'd say, well, when you read a novel or something, or you've seen a play, why don't you use that? Well, there is a problem because occasionally it's illogical. I don't say illogical, it's illogical. You get a character can become another character. Like the hero switches to the villain, the villain to the hero. In a way, in life, it couldn't happen.
Yeah.
So there are flaws in it in the sense that it's not your normal conscious mind, it's the unconscious mind obliging you. As I say, I think it's doing it to entertain me because the days are so unentertaining. But of course, its own its own non or illogical method comes into it. So you can't, in general, use these as proper storylines because they're faulty in a normal logical sense. They have faults.
Yeah.
It's okay in the dream, but it wouldn't work otherwise. However, there was one which you could use, which because normally I forget the whole thing afterwards. What's the point in trying to remember it? But this one I remembered because it could have been used. The plot, it was a James Bond film, and the plot was this. They're going to do this operation in Russia, but they know that Bond is now well known, so they're going to be looking out for him. So they get a bunch of Bond lookalikes in a house, and they train them all up, and they're all going to go simultaneously in order to, so the authorities will be preoccupied and say, what the hell's going on here? Is he there? Is he there? Where is he? So that's their plan, to send these lookalikes. Okay, fine. Now, the twist in the plot is that one of the lookalikes is a double agent. He's a Russian, who's from Russia, whatever, who's heard about this scheme, and they've decided to infiltrate it so they can, they'll know when all the Bonds arrive, they'll know all about it, and they'll have, they'll play the top card. So you've got a double agent who's a Bond lookalike, and he's there. But you don't know, the audience, you don't know which one it is, right? And they all go to Russia, and they're all studying about, and it keeps going wrong, but you don't know which one's making it go wrong. You're trying to spot him. And the trick is, in fact, that he is left-handed, all the others are right-handed, and you notice it eventually. But you're trying to think, well, which one is which is the double agent? Now, that is virtually usable. That is, it's reasonable enough to be usable. So that I remembered that one.
That's a good one. You could use that as a story to illustrate your Neanderthal Cro-Magnon division in a James Bond style. Yeah, that'd be good. You might have a bestseller on your hands.
Yeah.
Yes.
But as a rule, as I say, the storyline won't stand up to the cold light of day.
No.
Various jumps or
No,
impossibilities.
most dreams have some
clearly,
totally illogical, don't they?
It's the other universe, It's the other.
Yes.
But
I often wonder whether that the illogical bits are actually the bits that are quite pertinent, really, in some way. When things happen that are not possible, it's almost like a directional arrow pointing you at something. I've never been able to sort that one out, but I would think they're the poignant bits. I would imagine.
Yeah.
When you go back home and then it's not your home, but it's somewhere else. That's saying something to you, or you go back, you go to the end of your street and it's not the end of your street, but somewhere else. That's it's drawing your attention to something.
Yeah.
I've never understood what that meant, really. Yeah, that's amazing about the dreams. Yeah.
But as I say, dreaming as such is a subject which the vast majority of psychologists have anything to do with. It's just nonsense. It's just. But well, why does it happen then? And why is it that we only get dreaming beyond the species, beyond the point where the two brains develop? Creatures lower in the scale, which only have the one brain, don't dream.
No.
Dreaming begins with the lizard-like creature that produced two brains, the cerebellum and the cerebrum.
Yeah.
With that, dreaming begins. And every animal above that on the scale dreams. Whatever animal you care to think of, they dream. And with human beings, you see, you can't say dreaming doesn't matter. If in experimental conditions you let somebody sleep, when they begin dreaming you wake them up, and then you let them go back to sleep again. When they sleep for an hour or two, and they wake up, you wake them up when when the electrometer shows they're dreaming. Those people become very ill and very mentally disturbed within a few days. They're getting plenty of sleep, but they're getting no dreaming sleep. If you deprive them of dreaming sleep, they become very ill. This is a fact. This is a scientific experiment.
There's this rapid eye movement phase. Is that correct?
That's one of the ways you can tell it.
Yes.
And by the way, the eyes move. The eyes are actually watching the events. They're not moving randomly. They are watching what's happening. Because if you wake the person up and say, "What have you just been dreaming about?" He says, "Oh, I was driving this car, and then this other guy pulled across." Well, those are the eye movements. Those fit with that description. So the eye movements are really, the eyes are watching the dream.
I wonder if that's what happens with blind people, maybe. That they're
I don't know how it works with them. If they've been blind since birth, I don't know how that works.
Because their eyes seem to move, don't they? And like Blunkett's eyes move.
Oh, I see. I don't know what that is. I've never studied that. It could just be a reflex thing. He could be watching his thoughts in some sense.
Yeah.
Yes, he could well be. Yes, he could be. But if he's never seen before, I don't know quite how that would work.
No, I don't know whether has Blunkett been blind since birth. I don't know.
There's a lot of that in sort of cognitive NLP. I don't know. We have the accessing thoughts, where the way people look with their eyes when they're accessing them. If you think of a colour, you look up.
Oh, yeah.
Like blue,
There are
for
things
example,
like that.
you look up,
Yeah.
Or you think of a song, or you try to another way because of your brain.
Oh, I see.
There was some interesting stuff in America where people who had these sort of near-death experiences that were on the operating table, and sort of skeptics always said that what it is really, when people say, "Oh, I saw my body, and I saw you get my false teeth and stick them in the cup, and you did that." The people always said, "Oh, well, what it is it's a sort of, as they're coming round, they can hear people discussing it, and they dream what the people are discussing." You see, that's been a sort of idea. But there's some operations they've been doing in America where they have to, for some reason, they take a long time, and they have to completely shut down the brain. So they do an EEG. They have a permanent EEG going, and they completely shut down. So there's no brain activity whatsoever. And they also have a time. They have a sort of a time scale along with the EEG, so they can tell exactly what's happening at each particular time. And people are still saying, "Oh, I saw this happening and that happening," even though there's absolutely not any trace of brain activity whatsoever.
Yeah. What they've done is, I imagine, is they switched off the main brain. They can't switch off the cerebellum because otherwise, the blood wouldn't flow, because the cerebellum monitors all the, autonomic processes. I'm okay on this because yes, it's the cerebellum doing it. That's okay with me. That's fine with me. But if you, by the way, a female rat, if you remove the cerebellum completely, surgically, take it away, it can still mate and rear a litter. Right. So clearly the cerebellum has a great deal more authority than scientists are prepared to accept. She can live as a normal rat, so to speak, to bring up the kids, to bring up the rear the litter, without any cerebellum at all, amputated. So, there you are, but there you go. But I don't know if you remember, but in one of the books I did a survey of the psychology textbooks available at British and American universities. I checked through the textbooks of the psychology courses. And they're huge books, like 500 pages, 700 pages, 1,000 pages. And I counted the time in the pages on which the cerebellum is mentioned. And it's something like, out of 700 pages, 8 pages deal with the cerebellum. 1,000 pages, 4 deal with the cerebellum. That's how excluded it is. And yet, from many points of view, it's the most complicated organ ever evolved by life on the planet. Not just the second most, the most. And yet, it's ignored by mainstream psychology completely. As is dreaming and so on.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, because science is the logical, rational part of our being, and it denies the irrational part, just as the irrational part denies the rational part. I mean, you try telling a religious person that various aspects of religion must be nonsense, they won't listen because they deny rationality, just as rationality denies religion. So it's the
security thing, maybe, as well, is it?
So what?
A security thing,
it's fear, a lot of it. I mean, I think schizophrenia is at least partly, apart from whatever physical and chemical things there may be involved, I think schizophrenia is cutting off the unconscious mind completely. You're so terrified of it, you have to cut it off completely.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the whole bloody thing breaks down because the two parts need to coexist. They need to cooperate, in some sense, even if it's
two sides of the same coin. But
well, even if they're sort of saying, okay, I'll get on with my view, get on with yours, they've got to live together, so to speak. If one denies the other completely, and of course, suicide bombing is the cerebellum denying all rationality. It just says
it's an irrational act.
Crap.
An unnatural act as well, isn't it? Because no other all animals are hell bent on survival.
Well, it's unnatural in the sense you've described. Although, of course, they convince themselves they're going to heaven and they're going to live forever. So they're not dying. They're transferring. In their view. Yeah. In their view. Yes.
So yes, it's true. It's interesting. I mean, the whole suicide bombing thing really does.
But you notice it's the Neanderthal cultures which do it. North Europeans don't do it.
No.
They're not able to do it that way. It's got to be people like it's got to be the Japanese, the Arabs. It's got to be you've got to be fairly Neanderthal to have that. To be able to do it.
It flies in the face of everything what we would class as Western or rational, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah. Well, it's a trance state, and as I say, it's commoner among. I mean, you wouldn't get.
You wouldn't get the IRA doing that, or
well, not only the IRA. You wouldn't. I was just thinking, right? The sort of Royal Fusiliers. You wouldn't get them doing that.
No,
it's not a Cro-Magnon thing to do.
No, it's not.
And of course, the other thing is, by the way, you're not allowed to say it anymore to Welsh and to Jew.
Yeah.
Those verbs are now banned.
Yeah.
But why do they exist?
Yes.
Well, it's because clearly there was a perception that the Welsh behave in ways that Cro-Magnon doesn't approve of, and the Jews too, of course.
Yes.
So, I mean, to Jew has been banned for a long time, but to Welsh has recently been banned. You can't say it to Welsh anymore. But
Yes,
it's
people always
clearly
used
a
to- Yes,
recognition.
people always used to use those words.
Oh,
They would,
yeah,
Welsh
it's a
on a mat
recognition.
or Jew somebody out. Or
Yeah, you
something.
Welshed on me. It's, it's Cro-Magnon saying this fucker's behaving like Neanderthal. Well, he is
Yes.
Neanderthal. And yeah, it's all right for Neanderthal to cheat, because that's not cheating for Neanderthal. It was normal Neanderthal behaviour.
Yeah, I suppose if you went through all of the, I suppose you could call them racist remarks, similar to that, you'd probably come up with a whole list that probably defined certain races. I would think certain
I
traits.
think you probably could. Yeah. I'm surprised there isn't one to Irish. I'm surprised at that.
Well, I suppose the Irish are. I mean, everybody always says that well, certainly the English always see the Irish as thick, but it's not the case of being thick. It's just a completely different thought process. Isn't
Absolutely.
it? I mean, when every time I've been to Ireland, the people are more intuitive,
Yeah.
and to the English that's seen as irrational.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yes, absolutely.
And I suppose the Scottish are always perceived as being tight, but it might be that they're just the lives were harder for the Scottish, and therefore they had to be more frugal.
Well, that's certainly part of it. But any behaviour which is that different, it gets stigmatised.
Yes.
It gets stigmatised. But I think it's basically Neanderthal, basically.
Yeah. It
All
is
of it.
interesting, isn't it? That, well, in fact, when you actually look at all of these insults, they're probably quite logical, and they're not necessarily insulting if you get to the root of them.
They are based on some sort of fact, some sort of reality. It's like calling the Chinese slope heads.
Yeah.
If it weren't the case that the forehead does slope more in Asian peoples, then the nickname wouldn't stick. You couldn't have a nickname which
No.
didn't bear some resemblance to reality.
Yeah.
And that's like all these other terms. They must have some basis in observed fact, otherwise they wouldn't be there. Okay, they're also prejudiced,
Yeah.
and they're exaggerated, but they have some kind of basis in reality.
I think that the sort of racial prejudice is something that probably goes back to a very primitive thing, isn't it? That if if somebody who looks different to you comes to your tribe or to your gathering, then they're going to be perceived as a threat if they come in force, aren't they?
Oh yeah, but that's not quite the point. I mean, I don't think the Germans and the Scandinavians would perceive each other this way, but if you go to the south of Europe, then you start saying things like "Wogs begin at Calais." You remember that one? "Wogs begin at Calais." Oh, it used to be said a lot in my day.
Yeah.
In other words, Neanderthal starts off down there, France, down towards the south, whereas Scandinavia isn't.
Yeah.
Aren't Wogs.
I
So
see.
all these things have some kind of, there's some perception
Yeah.
of the various, Neanderthal Cro-Magnon balances.
Yeah.
Because I'm always saying, we're all both. It's a question of which one you choose to
Yeah.
support.
Yeah.
We're all both.
I suppose it's whatever.
By the way, I've told you, you know the simian line, do you? Well, show me your hands, please. You've got the normal head and heart. You see the head and heart lines? You know what they are.
Yeah. Well, I think
Those
so.
two.
Yeah, head and heart.
I think our friend Simon has got the simian line, the one line across. Do you know about that?
No.
It's the ape line. All apes have that.
All right.
It's called the ape line. Only a small percentage of people have it. Tony Blair's got it.
Well,
You've got it.
Have you got it?
He's got it. There you are. That's part of your Neanderthal inheritance.
Oh.
Because I say that all Neanderthals had it, standard.
Mm.
That's my argument. And the head and heart line, which you've got, is Cro-Magnon.
Oh,
So it's one more in my endless list of things. This would correlate with. I mean, I'm right-handed. You're probably right-handed, are you? Yeah. But I say if you look, if you examine a large number, you find more left-handed people have it than right-handed people.
Mm.
But
When did you first notice that?
when did I first notice the simian line? Not at first. I can't remember how it first came to me. How I first spotted it. But I haven't written about it in any of my books, I don't think.
Mm.
But Tony Blair's got it. You see him when he waves. You'll see it.
Ah.
And it's called the ape line because all apes have it. That's the standard.
Yes, I was
and
gonna
I
say,
think Neanderthal had it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it
So
looks
it's one
ape-like
more
when
of
you
an
look at
of
that.
a. As I say, I've got a list of about 90 items.
Yeah.
And if they correlate, then it's proof.
Yeah.
It's proof. Yeah.
You've got a strange phenomenon because although you're right-handed, you actually play your guitar left-handed, don't you? Because
Do you?
you damage your
Ah.
tendons in one hand, so you
Well,
had to
that's different.
relearn. Didn't
That's
you?
different. Yeah, that's different. Yeah.
Most of my family, most of my family said my father